capital. She may be in a safe house right now. The army chief of Bangladesh expected to speak at any stage now, with student protests getting quite out of control. It all started as a result of a quota in government jobs which had been announced by which had been cleared in fact by the court. There was an effort by the court to actually roll that back. Initially, however, the Prime Minister endorsed that, and even though she did later on try and roll that back or announce the rollback, it was too late. Massive protests in a country where there is approximately a 30% unemployment rate for students who are otherwise qualified. That's what this is all about. We're going to take a short break and continue with this breaking news on the situation in Bangladesh.
Hello, Moto.
Motorola Razr 50 Ultra comes with Google Gemini.
Hello and welcome to India Sense, where I speak with global opinion makers.
The United States has made a strategic decision over the last 20 years to move closer to India.
Now, a $7 trillion economy seems a perfectly conceivable number.
If you want to be a national party, it's that you sort of accept the way the world is rather than want to endlessly hark back to how it was.
Modi is promoting the digitization of the economy, which is accelerating growth in the country.
Get ready for the ride of your life. NDTV brings you the NDTV Auto Show with me, Mugdha Mishra. From the fastest supercars to the sleekest new energy vehicles to your trusted daily ride, we cover it all. Every Saturday at 10:30 a.m. and Sunday at 8:30 p.m. only on NDTV 24/7. Your next great escape starts here. The biggest democratic exercise in the world. Team NDTV covers it from ground zero.
BJP really had to fight a tough election this time.
Unprecedented exercise. Unmatched coverage.
There is no dispute. जनता को decide करना है.
From polling to counting, NDTV brought you the most trustworthy news and updates. Elections mean NDTV.
NDTV proudly upholds its legacy of trust and credibility. According to the prestigious Reuters Institute's Digital News Report 2024, NDTV is the top-most news platform in the country. Number one in both online and offline reach in India. Beating all its competition, NDTV stands for trust.
Welcome back. The big breaking news story. We are tracking a political crisis in Dhaka, Bangladesh, with the government about to fall. Sheikh Hasina, the Prime Minister, reportedly in a safe house at this stage, apparently may have already stepped down as Prime Minister of the country after the active involvement of the army, which has now moved in with tens of thousands of people protesters out on the streets of Dhaka, as that situation with regard to protests, which has already resulted in the loss of more than 100 lives, gets progressively more and more out of control. The army chief has been meeting political leaders and, as I understand it, at this stage is expected to address a press conference anytime now. Sources at this juncture, and we can use that word sources, indicating that Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina Wajid has resigned. The press conference by the army chief could take place at any stage now. As I mentioned, more than 100 people have died. Internet has been suspended. A curfew has been put in place. These are as a result of student protests. What exactly is this all about? Well, several weeks back, the Bangladesh High Court, the High Court or the Supreme Court in Bangladesh actually allowed certain reservations in government jobs to continue to be granted to those who were the relatives or the next of kin of those who had served in the war for independence. This resulted in massive protests in the country because the quota in jobs was a whopping 30%. In a country which has a significant unemployment rate, this resulted in protests, student protests, who said that this had to go. And even though the court did roll this back, and the government in fact announced that this was being rolled back, it didn't stop the intensity of the protests. The Prime Minister said she would take action against the protesters. The army said that, however, yesterday, and this was a significant statement by the army, when they actually said that they would stand by the people, and this may well have been a first sign that in fact the Bangladesh army was going to go against the Prime Minister. At this stage, it's a law and order crisis. We don't really know who's in charge. This is a major South Asian country, a very populous country, law and order completely out of control. But at this juncture, there are indicators that the Prime Minister may have stepped down or may have been forced to resign, with the army now essentially in touch. Let's get Ghazali back on the phone line if we can. But let me just give you the latest update that we have at this stage. What we were reporting as 100 dead, there are some indicators that the death toll in Bangladesh in terms of these protests has actually gone up to 300 odd who have lost their lives. In terms of a few more details, what we are seeing now on our screen is a long march into Dhaka by protesters. Remember, a lot of people in Bangladesh are only by word of mouth at this juncture getting to know about these protests. The government, as a means of ensuring that these protests don't get completely out of hand, has suspended the internet. There is a curfew which has been announced. The demand of these students is one and one only: the Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina must step down. The army has introduced a curfew in Dhaka that took place from last night, an indefinite curfew that has not stopped these protesters from coming in, that has not stopped the violence or the clashes, which began once again with great deal more ferocity yesterday morning. Protesters were attending the non-cooperation program under the banner of the Students Against Discrimination, with a one-point agenda: Ms. Hasina has to step down. What is this all about? We'll explain this to you with a great deal of detail. My colleague Vishal joins us now. Vishal, firstly, what are you hearing? Has the Prime Minister stepped down? Is she being kept in safe custody? Will there be a press conference soon?
So as we speak, there are different reports coming in. There are several international media. They're saying that Bangladeshi PM Sheikh Hasina has resigned indeed. But so far, there's no confirmation from the ground. International media, as I mentioned earlier, they are reporting that. And also some other reports are saying that she has already left the country, or she's on the way out of the country. She has either gone to London, or she could have also, gone to some other country. So confirmation is remaining, but reports are suggesting that she has stepped down after days and weeks of protests, violent protests. At least 300 to 350 people have been killed ever since the protests were sparked last month, mid-July. Students were demanding, scaling back of quotas, and they had gotten some kind of relief in that area. But the protests started again yesterday when students said that they want the ouster of the government. They wanted the PM to resign. In a short while from now, the Army Chief of Bangladesh is also set to address a press conference that will give us details as to what exactly has happened. Has she resigned? Has Sheikh Hasina's iron fist rule finally come to an end? All of that will be probably answered when Army Chief of Bangladesh addresses that conference.
So Vishal, let's talk a little bit about what this is all about. There has been a lot of protests across Bangladesh after a quota system for government jobs was reintroduced. It was actually cleared by a court. Sheikh Hasina, of course, endorsed it. And even though there was a rollback, it seems that these protesters aren't satisfied.
That is true. So beforehand, the quota was about of 40%. Then it was scaled back down to about 5% by the Supreme Court of Bangladesh a few weeks ago. That was done in the wake of the violent protest, which had killed about 200 people. So after that, the protesters had quieted down a bit. But in the last few days, they seem to have gathered momentum. A new student organization had come up, and they had called for a nationwide protest and called for the ouster of the government and asked for a nationwide movement, which was started yesterday. And it was supposed to be a 10-day. It is supposed to be a 10-day movement starting yesterday. So in just one day of that movement, more than 100 people have reportedly been killed. A lot of women, children, a lot of police personnel have been killed. About 15 odd police personnel were killed just yesterday. So all of that happening within the space of just 48 hours. And now it seems that, however, there's no confirmation as yet, but it seems that PM of Bangladesh has finally resigned.
All right, Vishal, I'm just going to, Ghazali, you're on air. Can you just be ready for that? At least 98 people were killed yesterday alone. The death toll, AFP reporting in Bangladesh, is at 300 at this stage. The Bangladesh High Court ruled in favor of reinstating a 30% quota in government jobs for descendants of freedom fighters. That's what this is all about. Ghazali, what is the latest that you're picking up about Sheikh Hasina?
See, we are being told from local agencies that she has left her official residence, but her location is not known yet. Rumors arrived that perhaps she has also left Bangladesh. That's not confirmed. Some images of her close to a chopper is being circulating on the social media. That's unverified for now. And right now, what we can report is that thousands of protesters have reached Dhaka, and they are trying to break into Sheikh Hasina's official residence. Now, amid all
that is the latest news that we are getting, and both of you just reflect on this. Thousands of protesters have stormed the palace of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, is what AFP is now reporting. Bangladesh's Channel 24 has been broadcasting images of crowds entering the Premier's official residence. We're just going to stick to this channel. Let's listen into what they're saying, and I'll try and translate.
দর্শক আপনারা স্ক্রিনে দেখতে পাচ্ছেন চ্যানেল 24 এর পর্দায় এক্সক্লুসিভ দেখতে পাচ্ছেন যে সাধারণ মানুষের যে অভিব্যক্তি সেটা কিন্তু ফুটে উঠেছে। সাধারণ মানুষ ঘুরে বেড়াচ্ছে গণভবনের ভেতরে, এবং
মজার ব্যাপার হচ্ছে এই মাঠে আমি সাংবাদিক হিসেবে আমার সুযোগ হয়েছিল, অনেকের যাওয়ার সুযোগ হয় না, তাদের জন্য আজকে গেট খোলা, সম্পূর্ণ দরজা খোলা।
যাদের গণভবন যাওয়ার সুযোগ
The gates have been opened up for ordinary people who otherwise don't have the ability of entering this. As I understand it, the images that you are seeing are from the Prime Minister's residence. There is ransacking that is now taking place. These people are walking off with chairs from the official residence of the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina.
এটা আসলে মানুষের আবেগ, এটা এই মানুষকে আসলে থামানো মুশকিল। তবে যাদের রক্তের উপর দিয়ে আজকের এই অর্জন, তাদের কথা পৃথিবীর ইতিহাসে, বাংলাদেশের ইতিহাসে জল করবে। 24-এর এই আন্দোলন, অনেকেই ফেসবুকে অনেক কিছু লিখতে পারেন না, এই সব কিছুই মানুষ মনে রাখবে। গণমাধ্যমে অনেক কিছুই আমরা যারা আসলে অনেক কিছুই দেখাতে পারিনি, সেটিও মানুষ মনে রাখবে।
Forever, says the commentator on Bangladesh 24 now. The protests which are taking place now are historic.
সেনাপ্রধান জেনারেল ওয়াকারুজ্জামান তিনি অন্যান্য বিভিন্ন রাজনৈতিক দলের সাথে বৈঠক করছেন।
The army chief is meeting political leaders from various parties at this stage.
ডক্টর আসিফ নজরুল সহ আরো ডক্টর হোসেন জিল্লুর, তাদের সাথেও বৈঠক করছেন। আমরা
Several meetings taking place with opposition and other leaders. Right now, the army chief, the Bangladeshi army, is leading these.
গেছেন কি ধরনের সিদ্ধান্ত আসে সেটি আমরা হয়তো কিছুক্ষণের মধ্যেই জানবো।
What decision is finally taken by them is something we'll get to know very soon.
2টার সময় একটা ব্রিফিং হবে, এবং ওই ব্রিফিং এর তারপরে হচ্ছে যে আমরা পরিষ্কার হব, কিন্তু সেই ব্রিফিংটা আসলে সেটি পেছানো হয়েছে। আমরা পরে আবার শুনলাম সেটি 3টায়, এখন 3:30 বাজে প্রায়। এখন পর্যন্ত আমরা সেটি
The meeting has been delayed somewhat. A press briefing has been delayed somewhat by approximately half an hour. They said that it would take place at 3 p.m. Bangladesh time, which I think Bangladesh is half an hour ahead of us. That has been pushed to 3:30 p.m. is what is being said. So, irrespective, that important announcement has been delayed.
এটি একটি ঐতিহাসিক মুহূর্ত, আসলে এটি ঐতিহাসিক। এই সময়গুলো, এই গত 30টা দিন বাংলাদেশে যা ঘটেছে, আজকে জুলাই মাসের 36, তাই না? 36 জুলাই। যারা আন্দোলনকারী তারা বারবার এটি বলছিলেন,
আন্দোলনকারী এই নতুন জেনারেশনের যে ছাত্রছাত্রীরা যারা বিক্ষোভের ডাক দিয়েছিল, যারা প্রতিবাদ করেছিল শুরু থেকে, তারা এই জুলাই মাস থেকে বলেছে যে শেষ হয়নি, যে যারা শহীদ হয়েছেন তাদের উদ্দেশ্যে তারা বর্ণনা করেছেন
since the month of July. They never felt that the protests actually ended, and this is the culmination of the protests which started at that stage.
এবং সেই সাথে আমরা দেখছি দর্শক এই মুহূর্তে আমরা স্ক্রিনে যেটি দেখছি
এই আন্দোলন সম্পর্কে আপনারা নিশ্চয়ই জানেন দর্শক, যেখান থেকে শুরু কোটা আন্দোলন, কোটা সংস্কার আন্দোলন, কোটা বিরোধী আন্দোলন, বিভিন্ন রকমের নাম দিতে পারেন, কিন্তু মূলত ছিল এটি ছাত্র আন্দোলন।
This is a students' protest. It is a protest against the quota which was announced. You can call it whatever you want, but that's what's taking place right now. The images on the left-hand side, as I understand it, maybe from the residence, the official residence of the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, or a part of her residence. She has been taken into safety. There is an announcement which is expected to take place anytime now. Okay, there's a helicopter in the air right now. I'm being told that might be one of the helicopters which is being used to ferry out possibly Sheikh Hasina or other people in her government. So that's a Mi-17 helicopter of the Bangladesh Air Force. The Prime Minister might actually be in that, being moved out of Dhaka, or at least one part of Dhaka, and being taken to safety. The protesters have stormed into her residence. They've been making off with chairs that we saw on our screens. Let's continue to listen in to commentary as, once again, I repeat, these are images of a Mi-17 helicopter of the Bangladesh Air Force, which has been used possibly to have Sheikh Hasina out. And let's keep listening in. That's a sofa. The people are on rickshaws and taking them away. All right, these are remarkable images that you see on the left-hand side of your screen. As I understand it, this is the official residence of the Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. There's a real crisis in the country right now. The Bangladesh government has collapsed. Sheikh Hasina has been flown away by a military helicopter, it now appears. People have been ransacking her house. These are student protests over a quota which was introduced for government jobs, who've been continuing to protest. Even though the quota was rolled back, there was no stopping the protests. 100 people were killed yesterday in the violence. As many as 300 people, some reports suggest, have lost their lives already. On your right are images from her premise, from the compound, and inside images on the left-hand side of your screen. At least 98 people were killed on Sunday, as I mentioned, because of these violent clashes. AFP reporting that 300 people are dead. This according to police and medical sources. Bangladesh has a curfew right now. Despite that curfew, these protests continue to take place. On the left-hand side of your screen, there's an image of a helicopter that you'll see. There are some suggestions that is the helicopter that she took to be escorted out of the national capital. What are these protests all about? They began last month when the Bangladesh High Court ruled in favor of reinstating a 30% quota in government jobs for relatives or descendants of freedom fighters. After the Prime Minister refused to meet student demands to reverse the order, the protests intensified, which led to clashes with police and government supporting groups. Earlier on, 200 people were killed. That number went up by nearly 100 yesterday. Many were injured when the protests began in right earnest in July. The government, as a result of all of this, has cut off connectivity through broadband or internet. That was apparently announced for a period of 11 days at this juncture. We don't know if that internet is up in Dhaka at the moment. It was restored a little later. The protests had reduced for a while as talks began with the government, but started again as students called for a nationwide civil disobedience movement. They asked the Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina to step down from her position. They were demanding a public apology from Hasina for the deaths and the removal of several of her ministers. That was a secondary demand. They also want the government to reopen schools and universities which had been closed since the protests intensified. But the situation now on the streets of the Bangladeshi capital, Dhaka, completely out of control. Sheikh Hasina, as we understand it, the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, has been flown out of the national capital. There's pilfering that is taking place in her official residence. People inside and outside her our home, Bangladesh, Channel 24 Bangladesh, who we were listening to, describing the sentiments of these protesters, saying that this was a historic day in the history of Bangladesh. Let's just listen into what's happening now and I'll translate.
ডক্টর হোসেন জিল্লুরের কথা আমরা শুনেছি, এছাড়াও বিভিন্ন রাজনৈতিক দলের সিনিয়র নেতৃবৃন্দ তাদেরকেও তারা ডেকেছেন।
The army has called meetings with several opposition leaders, and the commentator naming some of those leaders from the opposition, presumably the government as well, who will be meeting with the army. We expect an army press conference. Last I heard that press conference has been delayed.
চালানো হবে বা ঘোষণাটা কিভাবে দেয়া হবে সবকিছুই হয়তো তিনি একটা পরিষ্কার ধারণা হয়তো দিবেন। গণভবনের যেই ছবি আপনারা দেখছেন এটি আসলে ঐতিহাসিক, কারণ এই গণভবন বহু কিছু সাক্ষী। গত 2000 সম্ভবত আমি যদি মনে করতে পারি 2013।
All right, these images were coming from Ganabhaban in Dhaka. Ganabhaban, as I understand it, the official residence of the Prime Minister of Bangladesh. It is the official residence of the Prime Minister of Bangladesh. That commentator saying that the images were historic, but again, playing out that one image, that one small video again in loop. That Mi-17 helicopter apparently was the one which, as I understand it, took Sheikh Hasina to safety. Where she's been taken, we don't know at this stage, but she has fled. She's been escorted to safety, with the Bangladesh crisis now escalating out of proportion completely. The Prime Minister being taken out of Dhaka. The images from Ganabhaban, and let's have those images out once again, is the official residence of the Prime Minister of Bangladesh. It's located in the north corner of the National Parliament House, which is in turn located in Shere Bangla Nagar in Dhaka. After independence, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman worked in Bongo Bobhon, which is located on Minto Road, so that was another place. This was created more recently. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina moved into Ganabhaban on the 6th of March 2010, more than a year after she'd been elected. So that is a new, a relatively new official. Let's just listen into what's taking place. All right, apologies. These are earlier images of. Let's have these images out, since they seem to convey a wrong picture right now. Those were earlier file pictures of Sheikh Hasina, who is now nowhere to be seen after she's been moved out by helicopter. Let's have those images up of Ganabhaban once again. Listen to that commentary once again. To give you an idea of the looting which is taking place, of pilfering that is taking place. The commentary over there which we heard was of students, was of people saying that this was the gates were completely closed of this official residence. They've been thrown open. Even the tone of the commentary indicated angst and anger at Sheikh Hasina. Let's listen in.
বাড়ি গাড়ি কিনেছেন, এই মানুষগুলো হয়তো এই সুযোগে দেশ ছেড়েছেন, এখনো হয়তো ছাড়ার চেষ্টা করবেন বা করছেন, এবং অনেকেই হয়, আমরা যখন সাংবাদিকতার দৃষ্টিভঙ্গি থেকে বলি যে অনেকেই এইটা বিশ্বাস করতেন না যে শেখ হাসিনা সরকারের কোনো সময় পতন হবে, এবং এটা অবিশ্বাস্য তারা মনে করতেন। সেই জায়গায় তারা একটা প্রমাণ হয়তো পেলেন যে না, সবকিছুরই একটা শেষ আছে, সবকিছুর একটা শেষ হয়।
All right, so the commentator over there saying that it is that people earlier on in Dhaka and in Bangladesh could never believe that Sheikh Hasina would cease to be in power, but the gates have been thrown open, people are inside, and this is proof, and this is testimony to the fact that this is something that can happen and is happening. The images on the right hand side of your screen, dramatic images of protesters inside the official residence of the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, making way, walking off with chairs and sofas which we've seen, putting them onto rickshaws and taking them away. I mean, utensils being taken away as well. And the image on the left, apparently, of a helicopter used by Sheikh Hasina to be evacuated out of that area. I'm joined now by my colleague Saurabh Gupta, who with more on this. Saurabh, go ahead.
Well, Ganabhaban, of course, was breached a few perhaps minutes ago, and of course Sheikh Hasina was before that airlifted to a safer location, given that the protesters had defied curfew and were marching in Dhaka. Now this, of course, is an unfolding situation. Political stability in Dhaka right now is the word that perhaps everybody is talking about, given the fact that the Prime Minister has been airlifted. We don't know what happens next, because we're all waiting, like you said, for that press conference of the army chief, where of course what next for Bangladesh is going to be revealed. with the army chief speaking to the nation. But before that, what we've seen is Sheikh Hasina and her family members, including her sister, have been airlifted from Ganabhaban. A little before, actually, it was breached by these protesters. The images of Ganabhaban being breached are quite, of course, dramatic, as you were explaining, people walking off with stuff. But Ganabhaban is, let me tell you, a highly guarded, high security residence, official residence of Sheikh Hasina. It used to be her residence till at least a few hours ago. She was airlifted from there. Given the fact that these, this kind of a situation was anticipated, and she's now, of course, been airlifted, destination unknown, is what we are being given to understand from local media reports and our sources in Bangladesh. But she has been moved to a safer location, as Ganabhaban, the official residence of the Prime Minister, has been breached by protesters who defied curfew to march through the streets of Dhaka this morning. And of course, like we said, this was of course planned action. There was of course that curfew, but there was also the understanding that in all likelihood that curfew was going to be breached, as lakhs of protesters were to actually gather there. And now of course we have images of Ganabhaban being breached, with Sheikh Hasina having left Ganabhaban in a military helicopter, airlifted to a safer location.
Saurav, I'm just going to go through a couple of the main points over here. I'm going to come back to you and just describe with me what is exactly taking place. The latest news that we have at this stage is that Sheikh Hasina, the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, has been moved to safety. Her house has been ransacked. Protesters are in the premises of Ganabhaban, that is the official residence of the Prime Minister of Bangladesh. Some reports suggest may have actually fled the country. Is she in India? That's a question that really does need to be asked at this stage. We do not know. Protesters have stormed the Prime Minister's palace. The Prime Minister's son has appealed to security forces. The Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's son, Sajib Wajid, said in a social media post, "Your duty is to keep our people safe and our country safe and to uphold the constitution. It means don't allow any unelected government to come to power for 1 minute. It is your duty." The protests have intensified. Earlier reports suggested that resignation was a possibility. Irrespective of whether she's resigned or not, she's been moved out, possibly of Dhaka, to relative safety. Whether she's still in the country or she's been moved out, and if so, is she on her way to India, is something that needs to be looked at closely. Troops have been patrolling with armored personnel carriers for a while now, but they have actually not engaged in violent clashes per se with, given the numbers, but we have seen the loss of 300 lives. But in terms of numbers, some suggest that as many as 3 lakh people have lost their lives. These are incredible images taking place. That's the father of the nation. Protests taking place, people clamoring over that statue of Mujibur Rahman. Let's just go across to Ayanjit Sen, Bangladesh Affairs expert. These are drastic images, radical images that you actually see on our screen. Could you give us an idea or your sense of what's happening? The images we see are actually of people clamoring onto a statue of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the former president of Bangladesh. One of the most charismatic leaders in the 70s, a daring statesman, but obviously that legacy is now under threat.
Yes, Vishnu. I think the country of Bangladesh is in complete chaos. And, what has happened over the past few days, but what happened today has been a huge surprise because, we are witnessing history as a way that Waqaruzzaman, the army chief, is going to address shortly. And on the anvil, what's going to happen is that in all likelihood, she will have to resign and probably give over the, now what happens post that, whether there'll be new elections coming in or, anything else on the anvil, we'll have to wait and see. But
Orange, let me ask you this. The images that we see on our screen right now, on the right, you see a protester right next or on a statue, climbing up a statue of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the most iconic Bangladeshi leader, the leader of Bangladesh, who led their country to freedom, extremely close to India. And the protests which have been taking place are over quotas which were given to the descendants of freedom fighters, which a lot of people in Bangladesh, these students, said were unacceptable. Is this a new generation of Bangladeshis who feel that legacy is probably problematic if it comes in the way of employment?
I think definitely because Bangladesh currently is undergoing a huge amount of unemployment with the figures really high. And originally, when the quota system was introduced with a huge amount of jobs being kept for jobs, of course, and even in the university seats being kept for people who fought the
Oh, these are very,
1971
very
war.
tragic images. Let's have that up full screen, please. That man trying to break down that statue of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. Mujibur Rahman had the honorific prefix of Bangabandhu. He was a Bangladeshi politician, a revolutionary, a statesman. He held many positions as Bangladesh's president or its prime minister from April 1971 until his assassination in August 1975, extremely close to India, but the single most revered figure in Bangladesh. And you've got people with pickaxes trying to destroy that statue of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. There is mad protest right now taking place in Bangladesh. The legacy of their greatest freedom fighters now being sort of threatened. Let's just go across to Zulkarnain Sair Khan, an investigative journalist. Mr. Khan, thank you very much for joining us. The images that we see are from Ganabhaban, the residence of the Bangladeshi Prime Minister who's now fled. What are some of the details that you're picking up?
Well, this is very extraordinary scene coming from Dhaka, Bangladesh. The people who have been oppressed for nearly 2 decades, for 15 years, they have all come out to the streets, and you can see how jubilant and how happy they look. On the other hand, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, it is a shame that she failed to contain the democracy of the country. She failed probably in all possible segments to uphold democratic values and people's rights.
Zulkarnain, just to put this in perspective, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman is the father of Sheikh Hasina, right?
Right, yes.
And therefore, this is anger being directed at the man who in many ways gave Bangladesh its independence. From East Pakistan, they went to Bangladesh. The father of the present Prime Minister, his statue being broken down. Could you explain to us the significance of this moment?
It is absolutely, it is saddening. I personally, I feel bad about it because Sheikh Mujibur Rahman has, of course, positive contribution to Bangladesh's independence. But again, responsibility goes to Sheikh Hasina because Hasina and the party, they have kind of created a cult around Sheikh Mujibur Rahman in Bangladesh. So you go anywhere, it will be named after the Sheikh families. So hospitals, colleges, numbers of public institutions, it's all about Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. So what you think is an outburst of public that they are showing the retaliation, that it was not a wise thing to do. You just cannot rebrand an entire country in your father's name.
All right. What happens next? The army is out on the streets, but they are not protesting. They're not taking on the protesters. Obviously, the numbers are too large. The numbers that we have seen are being reported up to 4 lakh protesters. Is that what you've also heard?
I have heard it's around 10 lakh protesters have marched towards Dhaka from every part of the country.
All right, and that image of that helicopter that we actually saw was the one which Sheikh Hasina apparently boarded to escape. Do we know where she's gone?
The last what I have heard, the very last from a very credible source in the military is India have denied Sheikh Hasina any entry access, and also United Kingdom denied Sheikh Hasina any kind of entry access. So she is still waiting in Dhaka to fly to a safer destination. I have been told that she is trying to go to Belarus.
You've been told that she's trying to go to Belarus, and that
Yes.
she's been denied access by India. Is that right? Is that what you're hearing?
That's what I have been told. I cannot verify that, but it came from a military source,
Right.
a highly placed military source.
Right. And we expect the army chief to address the nation very soon, right?
Very soon, yes, in next 15 minutes time. It's quite normal because India have already supported Sheikh Hasina throughout all these years. They stood by her, but again, what she did, she has blood on her hand. Hundreds of school kids, even children were killed in this mayhem, which we have witnessed since 16th of July. So she will have to be held responsible for this. and nobody would like to have such a liability in their country, and then create a diplomatic riffle with the counterpart.
All right. Could you tell us a little bit about the army chief? Is there any sense that if it is the army which is in charge, and quite evidently they are in charge,
I can't hear you.
Then go ahead.
I cannot hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, yes.
No, I'm just trying to say that are we looking at a protracted period of military rule in Bangladesh?
I don't really think so. I don't really think so, because Bangladesh military would like to stay away from state affairs like this. So I have a strong feeling that there will be a transitional neutral government formed by experts like academicians, teachers, or ex-bureaucrats. So I don't really think army would take anything like that. Like army would intervene in that.
So what your sources are indicating, Mr. Khan, is that she's headed to Belarusia, right?
That's what I have been told last, that India denied her any kind of access. United Kingdom denied her any kind of access, and now they're attempting to fly to Belarus. Yes.
All right. Now, just for the benefit of viewers over here in India and indeed around the world, since we broadcast around the world, there was a rollback, right, to the quota. It was a 30% quota for the descendants of freedom fighters in government jobs. That was then rolled back. Why did the protest continue?
The protest continued because when the protest started, before 16th of July, it was all going on very peacefully. It all went sour when Sheikh Hasina used the term Razakar to vilify the protesters, because Razakar is a term that is seen as derogatory in Bangladesh. Razakars are basically the AD of Pakistani troops who killed hundreds of thousands of Bangladeshis during the War of Independence in 1971. So, it was kind of a war of choice by Sheikh Hasina and her party men to vilify people who they do not like. So they also termed these Gen Z kids as Razakars. So a kid born in year 2000, if you tell him that you were you come from a Razakar family or you're a Razakar yourself, it just doesn't look nice.
And then, could you give us a sense of how these protests have actually been spreading across the country, not just in the last few days, but since the month of July?
The protests spread because after that 16th of July, there was very fierce clash between students and police and Army League, the ruling party's student wing, and they killed nearly 300 students, including children. Their sniper men were assigned to take down targets. So we have seen 44 headshots, 44 deaths with headshot wounds and neck wounds. And while forensically identified those, we figured out that they were shot with 7.62 into 54 bullet, which was shot from a sniper gun. So how on earth somebody can assign snipers to take down?
All right, Mr. Khan, hold on for half a second. I'm just going to listen in to what Channel 24 Bangladesh is saying and translate. Yeah. All right, we'll get the live images up in a moment. We expect the Bangladesh Army Chief to speak anytime now, but I just want to reflect on these images once again. That is Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the father of Bangladesh, of independent Bangladesh, the man who took Bangladesh to nationhood, the father of Sheikh Hasina. Let's just go back, and that statue was being destroyed. But for the moment, let's go back to these live images and see what we can report.
জাতীয় পার্টির সিনিয়র দুজনের কথাও আমরা শুনলাম তাদের সাথে কথা বলে আসলে এখন বোঝা যাবে আসলে
Already there's a press conference which is about to be set up right now. I could see the podium as it were, which was set up just on the left hand side of your screen. We expect the army chief. Okay, let's try and listen in.
আলাইকুম। আপনারা জানেন যে দেশে একটা ক্রান্তিকাল চলছে। আমি সমস্ত রাজনৈতিক দলের নেতৃবৃন্দকে এখানে আমন্ত্রণ করেছিলাম।
There is a crisis in the country. I have invited all opposition leaders and political leaders here.
আলোচনা করেছি। সেখানে আমরা সিদ্ধান্ত নিয়েছি যে একটা ইন্টারিম গভর্নমেন্ট আমরা ফর্ম করব।
We've taken a decision to form an interim government.
গভর্নমেন্টের মাধ্যমে এই দেশের সমস্ত কার্যকলাপ চলবে।
Business will continue in this country through this interim government.
যে এই ইন্টারিম গভর্নমেন্ট ফর্মের ব্যাপারে ওনার সাথে আলাপ আলোচনা করে আমরা একটা ইন্টারিম গভর্নমেন্ট ফর্ম করে দেশ পরিচালনা করব।
We will run this government with an interim government. Run this country with an interim government.
হত্যা সমস্ত অন্যায়ের বিচার আমরা করব।
We will take all decisions.
আপনারা সেনাবাহিনীর প্রতি আস্থা রাখেন,
Trust the armed forces.
আমি সমস্ত দায়িত্ব নিচ্ছি।
I take all responsibility.
আপনাদের জানমাল এবং আপনাদেরকে আমি কথা দিচ্ছি।
I promise all of you.
আপনারা আশাহত হবেন না। ইনশাআল্লাহ আপনাদের যত দাবি আছে সেই দাবিগুলো আমরা পূরণ করব।
I assure all of you that we will meet your demands.
ফিরিয়ে নিয়ে আসব। আপনারা আমার সাথে সহযোগিতা করেন।
Please support us.
দয়া করে আর এই ভাঙচুর, হত্যা,
stop the murder, stop the violence, stop the destruction.
এগুলো থেকে বিরত হন।
Please remove yourself from this violence.
আমার কথা মতো চলেন, আমাদের সাথে যদি একসাথে যদি কাজ করেন, করি আমরা।
Listen to us, work with us.
আমরা একটা সুন্দর পরিণতির দিকে আমরা অগ্রসর হতে পারব।
We will work to a proper solution for Bangladesh.
মারামারি করে এই সংঘাতের মাধ্যমে আমরা আর কিছু অ্যাচিভ করতে পারবো না।
We cannot achieve anything through violence.
পাবো না। সুতরাং দয়া করে আপনারা সমস্ত ধ্বংসযজ্ঞ, সমস্ত অরাজকতা, সমস্ত সংঘর্ষ থেকে বিরত হন।
Therefore, I ask all of you to stop the sangharsh, to stop the violence, to stop the protests.
প্রতিটা হত্যার বিচার করা হবে, প্রতিটা অন্যায়ের বিচার হবে।
There will be decisions which are taken about everything wrong that has taken place.
নেতারা এখানে উপস্থিত ছিলেন। আমি ওনাদের ইনভাইট করেছিলাম এখানে।
I've invited all the leaders over here. We've had a conversation.
আমরা একটা সুন্দর আলোচনা করেছি।
It's been a positive conversation.
এই আলোচনাটা
in that conversation
ফলপ্রসূ হবে বলে আমি মনে করছি এবং আমরা একটা সুন্দর একটা ইন্টারিম গভর্নমেন্ট ফর্ম করে
in that conversation we spoke about the creation of an interim government and I assure you that the interim government will work.
ত্যাগ করেছেন এবং এখন ইন্টারিম গভর্নমেন্ট ফর্ম করে আমরা
All right, we'll come back to audio in just a moment. That's the Bangladesh Army chief over there saying that there is an interim government which is going to be formed in Bangladesh. That interim government is going to be formed on the basis of a conversation which has taken place in the last little while with several opposition leaders and other political leaders over there. He's made an appeal to all of the protesters to end the protests, to end the murders, to end the violence, and has said to work with the army and to have faith in the army. And he's promised the protesters, let's just keep listening in.
এবং শান্তি শৃঙ্খলার পথে ফেরত চলে আসে।
প্লিজ রিটার্ন টু আ পাথ অফ
অনেক ক্ষতি হচ্ছে, অর্থ সম্পদের ক্ষতি হচ্ছে, জানের লোকজন মারা যাচ্ছে।
People in the villages have died as well.
আপনারা বিরত হন এবং আমাদের সাহায্য করেন। আমি সমস্ত দায়িত্ব নিচ্ছি।
Please help us. I take all responsibilities.
ধন্যবাদ।
চেষ্টা করছেন আমরা আবারও শুনি।
Thank you.
না, এটা খুব আর্লি স্টেজ। আমরা যাব মহামান্য রাষ্ট্রপতির সাথে যে আলাপ আলোচনার মাধ্যমে এটা আমরা করব। আজকে এখানে জামাতের আমির ছিলেন, আমাদের শীর্ষস্থানীয় নেতৃবৃন্দ এখানে ছিলেন।
All right, we're waiting for this audio to be restored.
দিয়েছেন এবং এবং আমি আশা করি যে ছাত্ররা সেই বার্তা শুনে ওরা কথা ওনাকে সবাই শ্রদ্ধা করে, ছাত্ররা শ্রদ্ধা করে, ওরা এই বার্তা শুনে তারা এই পরিস্থিতি নিয়ন্ত্রণে নিয়ে চলে আসবে এবং আমরা একটা সুন্দর একটা পরিস্থিতির দিকে আমরা এগিয়ে যাব ইনশাআল্লাহ। এখানে আওয়ামী লীগের কেউ ছিল না, না আওয়ামী লীগের কেউ ছিল না। হ্যাঁ আজকে বিকজ আমাদের এই সময় নাই, এটা একটা বিশেষ একটা পরিস্থিতি, আমরা আজকে যে এই পরিস্থিতি এটা একটা আমরা একটা নিয়ন্ত্রণ নিয়ে আসবো। সেনাবাহিনী শান্তি শৃঙ্খলা বজায় রাখার কাজ চালিয়ে যাবে।
The armed forces are continuing to try and ensure that peace is maintained.
দায়িত্ব, ছাত্রদের দায়িত্ব, রাজনৈতিক নেতৃবৃন্দ এবং রাজনৈতিক
It's the responsibility of students as well
দায়িত্ব হচ্ছে সেনাবাহিনীকে সাহায্য করা,
to assist the armed forces.
এবং আপনারা মিডিয়ার মাধ্যমে
And through the media, I'd like to say,
একটু আমাদের সাহায্য করেন,
please help us,
সুতরাং আমরা তাহলে এই পরিস্থিতি নিয়ন্ত্রণ সহজে
so that we can bring control to the situation at hand.
না যদি জিনিসটা শান্ত হয়ে যায় তাহলে আর কারফিউর কোনো প্রয়োজন নাই।
A curfew will not be required if the situation becomes peaceful.
প্রয়োজন নাই, কোনো গোলাগুলির প্রয়োজন নাই। আমি আদেশ দিয়ে দিয়েছি সেনাবাহিনী কোনো গোলাগুলি করবে না।
The armed forces will not open fire. I have passed an order.
আমি আশা করছি যে আমার এই বক্তব্যের পরে
I assure you that after my statement now,
আমরা একটা সুন্দর পরিবেশের দিকে যাচ্ছি।
we are headed in a good direction, in a beautiful direction.
আমরা এটা না, আমি আজকে রাতের মধ্যে একটা আমরা সলিউশনে যাওয়ার চেষ্টা করব, বাট আমাদের
we are going to try and find a solution by tonight.
এটা আমরা এখনো এটা টু আর্লি, আমরা যাচ্ছি,
it's too early,
আমরা কথা বলবো মহামান্য রাষ্ট্রপতি,
we are going to be talking, we are going to be having discussions.
আমরা পৌঁছাবো। পরিস্থিতি ছিল খুব কম, সময় খুব কম ছিল, আমি যাদেরকে পেয়েছি অনেককেই আমি বলেছি সবাই হতেন, বাট প্রধান রাজনৈতিক দলের সমস্ত নেতৃস্থানীয় নেতৃবৃন্দরা তাদের সাথে আমি কথা বলেছি এবং ওনারা সবাই আমাদের এই প্রস্তাবে, এই যে আমরা যে আলোচনা করছি সবাই এটাতে রাজি হয়েছেন। এখানে মমিনুল হক সাহেব ছিলেন, এখানে জামাতের আমির ছিলেন, জুনায়েদ সাকি উনি ছিলেন, তারপরে ডক্টর আসিফ নজরুল ছিলেন।
All right, the Bangladesh Army Chief over there naming all of the political leaders who were called for the meeting, which has just taken place. There's been a decision to form an interim government. Further decisions will be taken in the next couple of hours. The bust over there on the right-hand side of your screen was of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, Sheikh Hasina's father, the father of Bangladesh. The fact that they are trying to destroy his statue gives you an idea of the extent of anger in Bangladesh at this stage. Sheikh Hasina has been moved to safety.
যেহেতু ওনাকে
there will be a new government in place,
এবং উনিও একটা সুন্দর একটা ভিডিও মেসেজ উনি দিয়েছেন ছাত্রদের জন্য। আমি আশা করব যে এই ভিডিও মেসেজটাও কাজে ইয়াদ হবে, কাজ দিবে, এইভাবে আমরা কাজ করে দেব। সবাই ভালো থাকেন।
There is a video message which has been sent to students in Bangladesh.
যত প্রশ্ন করতে থাকবেন আমাকে দেরি করাবেন।
The more you ask me, the more you're delaying me.
It's too early. আমরা
It's all too early.
কাজ করতে দেন, একটু সময় দেন।
Give me a little bit of time.
আমরা একটা সলিউশনের মধ্যে আমরা যাব।
We are going to find a solution.
আপনারা সবাই যারা আন্দোলনরত, যারা ছাত্ররা আছেন, আন্দোলনরত যত লোকজন আছেন, দয়া করে ঘরে ফিরে যান।
Everybody please go home.
আল্লাহ আমাদের মঙ্গল করুক। আল্লাহ হাফেজ।
আল্লাহ হাফেজ।
দর্শক আপনারা
All right, the Bangladesh Army Chief over there addressing the nation, a stunning couple of hours where Sheikh Hasina, the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, has been moved to safety. A house has been ransacked. A statue of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, Sheikh Hasina's father, also the father of Bangladesh, being defiled over there. Efforts to sort of break it down with using an axe. The Bangladesh Army Chief, in a press conference that you just heard right now, and I translated it, basically saying that there is an interim government which is being formed in Bangladesh. Repeated appeals to student protesters in Bangladesh to ensure that there is no violence, to go home, to work with the armed forces. political leaders in Bangladesh have had a meeting with the Bangladesh Army Chief. The Bangladesh Army Chief has told the armed forces not to open fire, but he has also told protesters that they must end the murders, they must end the violence, they must end the destruction, and that there is a beautiful path ahead for Bangladesh, and that he promises people and all of the protesters that all of the problems or the issues they have will be resolved favorably. Let's go back to Zulkarnain Syed Khan. Mr. Khan, you heard as much as I did what was being said. Any takeaways for you? Mr. Khan, can you hear me? All right, let's see if we've got Ayanjit Sen with us. Mr. Sen, you heard what the Bangladesh Army Chief had to say. Could you give us your sense of what you heard?
Well, in all likelihood, Jamaat and BNP together are going to form the next government, which is because at the end of the day, one thing you have to remember that nobody from the erstwhile Awami League came for the meeting, as the Army Chief mentioned. So from that perspective, if we see that the opposition is going to come back to the government, of course, an interim government all but sure that the opposition is going to come back to power here in Bangladesh.
There was an important message for Indian citizens as well from the External Affairs Ministry. It's a statement which came yesterday. They are repeating that statement now. Advisory for Bangladesh: in view of the ongoing developments, Indian nationals are strongly advised against travelling to Bangladesh till further notice. All Indian nationals presently in Bangladesh are advised to exercise extreme caution, restrict their movements and remain in contact with the High Commission of India in Dhaka through emergency phone numbers. And a series of numbers have been listed at this stage. But a rail crisis which has taken place in Bangladesh. Mr. Sen, did you manage to hear anything in that press conference about Sheikh Hasina and her whereabouts?
Yeah.
By the Army Chief at all, because as one of your experts said before, that she's not being flown into India or even Great Britain, which had apparently or reportedly said no to her presence over there. But it's in all likelihood, if she's fleeing to a foreign country, whichever country that is, if it's Belarus at the end of the day. But one thing is sure that first of all, the Council of Ministers who are right now in Dhaka, a few of them, I spoke to one of them today morning itself, and the state of the way he spoke, he talked about incidentally there was one very interesting element which came out 2 days back from the Pakistan High Commission in Dhaka, and it apparently said that in that written note from the Pakistan High Commission, it basically said that the students who are on protesting right now have approached the Pakistan High Commission and have asked for whatever help they can provide, to which the Pakistan High Commission has said that yes, we will provide all kind of help that is required for the protesting students. Now that's an interesting aspect which came up a couple of days back, which was not put out in the media from that perspective, but one of the Council of Ministers who was still there in Dhaka told me a few hours back that the situation is absolutely out of hands right now, and he is actually trying to now flee the country. Because
what I can share with you at this stage as well is there's a Bangladesh Air Force C-130 transport which took off a short while back, right? And we can track it on flight radar. It's flown overhead Kolkata without landing in Kolkata and is headed north at this stage. It's flying at an altitude of about 24,000 feet. It is south of Durgapur at this stage. The C-130 is a transport aircraft. It's a military aircraft. The Bangladesh Air Force operates it. Where is the C-130 headed? We don't know, because I'm going to try and see if my camera person can zoom in to this image that I have on my screen. Can my camera person please zoom in? Hi, can we just zoom in, if possible, to this image on our screen right now? Okay, and let's just cut to an image of this plane. This is on flight radar 24. Okay. So I'm just going to, yeah, great. So I'm going to show you what this is. Flight radar 24. This could be the plane carrying Sheikh Hasina. If it is, then it is a plane which took off from. It is a plane which took off from Bangladesh, from presumably from Dhaka. It flew direct overhead Kolkata, but as you can see, it didn't land in Kolkata. So I'm going to zoom in further over there. It directly crossed Kolkata without landing in Kolkata, right? It's now moving up, and we just follow the blue line that you see on the screen over there. It's south of Durgapur. It is past right now. We'll be looking at this very, very closely. Why would a Bangladesh Air Force C-130 transport with the code name Ajax 1431, that's the call sign, Ajax 1431, why would it be in Indian airspace at all at this stage? It's south of Asansol now. It'll be crossing into Bihar at some stage. Flight radar doesn't know where exactly, flight radar doesn't know where it's going to be headed at this stage. So we don't know where it's going to be headed over here, and we don't know the exact time. But I would suggest that the movement of this flight that you see on your screen, I'm just going to zoom out a little bit. Let's see if we can actually see this a little bit better if I hold it up like this. All right, I don't have it right now. But Ajax 1431 is the name of the aircraft, and I'm just going to try and track it one more time and show it on the map right now. Yeah, it is south of Asansol at this stage, and okay, so I've got a picture of the aircraft as well, and you can also see where exactly it is headed. Now, the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, perhaps ex-Prime Minister would be more appropriate at this stage, had boarded this Bangladesh Air Force C-130 aircraft, flew directly over Kolkata, did not land in Kolkata. That I find very, very interesting. Just look at this. The aircraft came down, flew right over Kolkata, didn't land in Kolkata, and is continuing to fly north, and where is it going to head right now? We don't know. It's swinging north at this stage. Why would a Bangladesh Air Force aircraft, actually be there? So at this stage, it's it's called Ajax 1431. That's all I know about the aircraft at this stage. But we're going to track it very closely. The assumption is that the Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina might actually be on that aircraft. On your left is a Mi-8 or Mi-17 helicopter of the Bangladesh Air Force, which she boarded to get out of her official residence, which was ransacked with hundreds of protesters entering. All right, let me just go back to my colleague Vishal, who's been tracking this minute by minute. Vishal, what are some of the other leads that you're picking up?
So right now, just a few moments ago, the Armed Forces Chief addressed a press conference. It was awaited for about an hour. He said that he had discussions with the people who have been protesting for days, and the students have conveyed him the message that they will, they will stop in some ways these protests, these violent protests. However, he's still appealing to the protesters that they need to maintain, peace in the country, because it's been weeks of violence which has killed dozens of people. Probably more than 300 people have been killed in the last 3 weeks. The violence had erupted back in July, mid-July, when protesters had demanded that the quotas should be scaled back, and they had some kind of relief by the Supreme Court of Bangladesh, who had stepped in and said that the quota will be scaled back from about 40% to 5%. However, the protests continued, and just in within 2 days of the new fresh phase of protest, the PM of Bangladesh had to resign. There had been calls for her to resign. That's how the fresh wave of protests has started. The thousands of protesters across the country, especially in Dhaka, they had been demanding that Sheikh Hasina has to resign. It was widely unexpected that she will resign so soon. It's been just 24 hours since the fresh wave of protest started. It killed about 100 odd people within the space of 24 hours, and within that time frame only, the PM of Bangladesh has resigned. Mind you, this is a PM that had ruled the country with an iron fist for about more than a decade, about 3 consecutive terms, thousands of disappearances of the opposition leaders. All of that will come into picture when the the new government comes in. As we've been reporting, the army has stepped in and said that it will form the interim government. Whether or not it will pass the baton to the opposition or continue to have this military rule, that remains to be seen. So all of that will have to be answered in the next few days or the months.
All right, I'm just going to go across to Mr. Khan, who's back with us. Mr. Khan, there is a Bangladesh Air Force C-130 Hercules aircraft, which is winging it across North India at this stage, North Bihar presently. Presumably, that's the aircraft with Sheikh Hasina on board. It flew right over Kolkata, didn't land over there. Do you have any information of where this aircraft is going, presumably with her on board?
Who's the person?
Mr. Khan, can you hear me?
Yeah. Hello.
Yeah, Mr. Khan, Vishnu here. I'm just trying to understand. There's a Bangladesh Air Force C-130 Hercules aircraft, which is now flying over Bihar. Presumably, it's got her in it. The timing of the takeoff is exactly coinciding with the crisis that we are seeing. It flew over Kolkata, didn't land over there. Do we know where she's headed, assuming that she's on board that aircraft?
I have been told that she's on board that aircraft, yes. She's on board that aircraft, and the aircraft, basically, she was not getting approval from the Indian authorities to fly through even, but I think they have secured the flight permission, and now they're flying through India, but I am not sure to which country she is heading to. Like, I have been told that she tried to land in India, but Indian authority did not accept it, considering the recent atrocities that took place in Dhaka. So nearly 500 people confirmed died, and there are many hundreds remain unaccounted for. Thousands people have lost their limbs, around 800 eye injuries. So they don't want to get into a diplomatic trouble with Bangladesh. So
it still needs to be seen whether this aircraft does land in Delhi or in any other Indian airbase, because there's only the aircraft will ultimately need to refuel as well, even if it's headed elsewhere. We're going to take a short break. There's a lot more coming up. NDTV continues to track and break every aspect of this story. The crisis in Bangladesh. Sheikh Hasina, the Prime Minister, has escaped Bangladesh, flying in an aircraft over India right now. We'll continue to look at this very, very closely. Come back with the very latest.
Stay informed and entertained with the new and updated NDTV News app. You can watch all our channels live, listen to podcasts, read breaking and exclusive news from around the world and more. Download the NDTV app today and get access to the best journalism and storytelling on your smartphone or tablet. The NDTV app. News that matters to you.
After great victory by Indian team, and today we are reporting from Mohali International Airport where we are showing these visuals. Arshdeep हमारे साथ हैं.
वो performance सही सारे दी थे बढ़िया results मिले.
We are in the city of Kanpur today because they have their champion back home, Kuldeep Yadav.
Desperation for each and everyone to go there and win the World Cup, and we did it.
International Airport where we are showing these visuals. Arshdeep हमारे साथ हैं.
वो performance सही सारे दी थे बढ़िया results मिले.
We are in the city of Kanpur today because they have their champion back home, Kuldeep Yadav.
Desperation for each and everyone to go there and win the World Cup, and we did it.
Stay informed and entertained with the new and updated NDTV News app. You can watch all our channels live, listen to podcasts, read breaking and exclusive news from around the world and more. Download the NDTV app today and get access.
Welcome back. You're watching our rolling coverage of the turmoil that has gripped Bangladesh. I'm Gauri Dwivedi and I'm joined by General Gigi Dwivedi, who's a defense analyst, to decode the very latest that's happening in Bangladesh and the security implications that arise from it. On your screens, viewers, are those images of vandalism and violence that protesters in Bangladesh have resorted to, even though their number one demand, that Sheikh Hasina should resign as Prime Minister, has been met. The violence and vandalism continues even as the army chief has appealed for calm. He's appealed for protesters to end their violence and go back. The army chief has also promised that there will be an interim government soon, but the security implications of this and the very latest that is happening in Bangladesh is what the focus will be over the next 30 minutes. Let me also get in my colleague Mohammad Ghazali to give us the very latest on what's happening. Ghazali, Sheikh Hasina's plane is expected to land in Delhi anytime soon. Talk to us what is happening right now behind the scenes. What is it that your sources within the government are telling you? How are they going to approach this situation right now?
See, the governments, especially the Ministry of External Affairs sources, are tight-lipped about how she will be received, whether there will be any government representative at the airport to see her or not, or what could be the duration of her stay. Because India is also maintaining a close eye on what is happening in Bangladesh. They don't want to be seen as somebody who has facilitated her escape from Bangladesh. And I'll just give you one update which we're getting from the Students Against Discrimination, that one group which was spearheading this anti-quota stuff in Bangladesh. They have issued a statement after the army said that there will be an interim government. They have said that the power transfer in Bangladesh should be done after prior consultation with the protesters, because they say that they have lost more than 100 people since yesterday. More than 100 people have died or been killed in this protest, so they should be consulted before somebody is appointed as in charge of the interim government in Bangladesh. But as far as Sheikh Hasina's arrival in Delhi is concerned, what we're picking up is that MEA is very tight-lipped about the situation. No one knows that who is going to be at the airport, but certainly there will be back-channel talks which are going on because she's arriving in Delhi.
Tell us, what is her final destination? Where is she headed from India? Where is she headed from Delhi? Tell us that.
Her niece is a parliamentarian in UK, so what we are being told is that she will be departing with her sister. She will be going to London after refueling her at Delhi airport. So her final destination will be London. She is not going to stay here in Delhi for a very long time. It will be ensured that she leaves for London as soon as the refueling is done at the Delhi airport.
Do we know who will be meeting her from the Indian side? Any idea the protocol that could be extended? She's now former Prime Minister of Bangladesh.
Yes, now she's the former Prime Minister, but there is no word as of now that who will be at the airport to see her, whether any Indian government official will go and receive her there. But all the assistance will be provided to her once she lands here in Delhi.
Okay, so along with Sheikh Hasina, her sister Sheikh Rahana is also traveling with her. And as reports seem to suggest right now, and as what Ghazali, my colleague, is telling, that they are headed to London right now. And there's no word on how Indian government is viewing this unprecedented situation in Bangladesh, given that Sheikh Hasina will be in Delhi for some time. Stay with us. I want to quickly get in a word from Vishal, and then I get in General Dwivedi as well. Vishal, now talk to us about the latest that is happening in terms of the protests that are happening. Visuals are coming in as we speak. We are taking them also for our viewers to see that the vandalism is going unabated. It's as if the army chief's appeal is having absolutely no impact on the protesters. What do they really want?
So when the protest began about 2 weeks ago, they demanded that the quota that had been extended to relatives of the freedom fighters who had fought in the 1971 war, so that quota should be scaled back. So that demand, that was the main demand of the protesters, and that actually happened, and that was scaled back after the Supreme Court of Bangladesh stepped in and took away that order. But that calm sustained for only a few days. That was just a few days of calm, and then the protesters started their protest again. That was yesterday when the new non-cooperation movement started, and the protest spread across the country, especially in Dhaka. At least 14 police personnel were killed, and some children and women were also murdered. Some were, lynched. Some were killed brutally. So there were reports all across the country that people were getting killed. Police were firing indiscriminately on the people, on the protesters. So there were some other videos on social media showing that the Bangladesh army had actually stepped in and supported the people in some areas. So all of that was happening, and then we heard the reports that Sheikh Hasina has finally stepped down. That was after weeks of protest, after at least 300 people had been killed. And these protests, as you rightly mentioned, have not really stopped after this major decision by the former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. They still continue to ransack properties. They continue to take down statues across the country. So that remains to be seen how the army, which has promised that it will bring calm to the country, how the army will actually do that. It has promised that an interim government will be formed soon with the remaining parties. But how that will happen, that remains to be seen, because as you mentioned earlier, the BNP did not fight the elections last time. So how they will work around that, that remains to be seen.
Yes, indeed, Vishal, it remains to be seen how this situation will be brought back to normal. Army chief did also say that there will not be any unprecedented shooting incident or any of that against the protesters. The army chief assured that the protesters will not be shot at, but he's also appealed for calm, but you're not seeing that. Let's get in some of those visuals as we get in General Dwivedi as well. And but first up, viewers tuning in right now, Sheikh Hasina, the 5-time Prime Minister of Bangladesh, has fled the country in an unprecedented security situation. She first came to power in 1996, was there till 2001, and since 2009, she has been in power. The longest serving Prime Minister of Bangladesh. This was her 4th term. The 4th term started on a note which led to many questions being asked about the elections itself, which was boycotted by the opposition. And since then, there has been a clamor that this election was not conducted in a free and fair manner, and democracy and democratic traditions in Bangladesh were being compromised by Sheikh Hasina. All of that finally led to her ouster, with her now being on way to London with a quick stopover in Delhi. General Dwivedi, I want to first now ask you is that what about the Indo-Bangla border? We'll come to the other aspects related to Pakistan and China, but first the border. That's the immediate security threat, isn't it? It's a porous border.
Absolutely, because India-Bangladesh border is about 4,050 kilometers, and it's a porous border and a very sensitive border, because as it is, a lot of infiltration and trans-border, breaches take place, and this border is very, very sensitive. I see two very important developments that are taking place. Firstly, Hindu minority population in Bangladesh is very vulnerable. In fact, when we fought the war, that time Hindu population was about 23%, today it's only 8%, and they'll be the first targets. And you can expect a lot of refugees coming in, point number one. And secondly, this is the time when the anti-India forces will gain ground. And therefore, in both the perspective, I think the border is very sensitive, and rightly so. Our security forces, especially guarding the border, must be on full alert, because the sensitivity, the porousness of border, and the length of the border, which is about 4,050 odd kilometers. Gauri.
Okay, let's stay with us, General Dwivedi, because I want to also get in my colleague Shreya as well as Vasudha Venugopal to give us the very latest that's happening. Shreya, you are at the airport. Tell us what's the latest that's coming in. It seems there are some reports suggesting that it could be senior IAF officials, that is the Indian Air Force officials, who could be receiving Sheikh Hasina, but no word is yet, no final confirmation is yet. Over to you. Give us the very latest.
That's right. There is no final confirmation here. We do not see the arrival of Sheikh Hasina, although there are these unconfirmed reports that she will sort of stop over here in New Delhi, and she's on her way to London. And she's, of course, as per sources, she has stopped in northeast city Agartala, the capital of Tripura, which is also the closest to Dhaka. But there are no signs here in the Indira Gandhi National Airport. We do not see any inkling of her arrival anytime soon. But of course, we are aware that India has sort of decided to offer her a safe passage through the Indian airspace following her request from Dhaka. And as for now, in New Delhi, we do not see any inkling of her arrival.
So, this is in fact one of the questions that I'm sure we'll have an answer to during the broadcast itself. Shreya is standing at the IGI airport, but it's a military aircraft in which Sheikh Hasina and her sister Sheikh Rahana are travelling. So there's a fair chance that it may not be the IGI airport, but probably the Hindon airbase. No clarity, no confirmation as yet, but possibility. Okay, Vasudha, you are at the Bangladesh High Commission. Tell us, how is it that the Indian government is monitoring this situation right now? Unprecedented, a lot of flux right now in our neighbour. Every challenge that could be anticipated is very much on the anvil right now.
Absolutely, Gauri, and we know we have seen this before in our neighborhood. We have seen things going really bad in Sri Lanka. We have seen what happened in Afghanistan and also in Myanmar. So this is a repeat of what we've seen. But Bangladesh is extremely pivotal when it comes to India's own Look East policy, and specifically with regard to India's efforts to stall China's predominance and influence in this region. I'm coming to you live from the Bangladesh High Commission, and like you rightly pointed out, Sheikh Hasina is expected to land in Delhi very shortly. But there is some sort of understanding that she would not be landing in the Palam airport, and there could be one of the other airstrips that she could be using. It could be either Hindon airstrip or anything else, but you know, there is a likelihood that she will not follow the conventional airport route, and we are not very sure as to what the diplomatic parameters would be. In the past also, India has given refuge to leaders who have faced protests in their country, but this is a very specific thing because there are allegations of high-handedness and also rigging of polls that Sheikh Hasina faces. Other than that, there is a lot of anger against her. These protests in Bangladesh started on the 1st of July, and these are mainly student-led, and this is because there was a court in Bangladesh which basically ruled in favor of reinstating 30% quota in jobs for family members of freedom fighters, which in some ways was seen as favoring members of Awami League. And today, if you see the visuals of what is happening in Bangladesh, offices of Awami League are being burnt down. So clearly there is anger against the party for basically, using undemocratic, conventions to, in some ways allegedly steal the mandate. Remember that Sheikh Hasina has been in power since 2009, and it's in January that she came back as the Prime Minister of the country for the 4th consecutive term. So clearly she has a lot of power in her hands, and there are many questions that are being asked, which is why India will be very careful, considering that it will have a lot of answering to do. Khaleda Zia, the main opponent of Sheikh Hasina, has been critical of Sheikh Hasina and Narendra Modi's friendship in the last 10 years. And like we were talking about how the last 10 years for bilateral ties between these two countries has been seen as a golden age of diplomacy. In Bengali, they say it's a Shunali Adhyay. So that basically saw a lot of projects take place in port connectivity, infrastructure, energy, movies, and also enhancing cultural relations. But then that seems to be a thing of the past, because clearly Sheikh Hasina is, her house has been seized, Ganabhaban has been seized. She had to flee from Bangladesh along with her sister in extremely surreptitious circumstances, and now she could be landing in Delhi anytime soon. This is in some ways a very diplomatic dilemma for India, but of course, our foreign ministry officials are very adept at this, and we have somebody like Dr. S. Jaishankar, who actually met her on the 24th of June. So she was here just a few weeks ago for the swearing in and also for the bilateral meeting, and she's been a regular visitor to India. She's been a trusted ally, but clearly when it comes to foreign policy, India will put its own interests first, and that will possibly reflect in its understanding and approach to this issue as well.
Absolutely. Stay with us, Vasudha. General Dwivedi, now as we talk about the security implications, there's also a bit of a diplomatic area that India needs to now find sort of the best possible solution to, which is that this was an election, Sheikh Hasina's election in January was supported by India. India was one of the few allies that Bangladesh had, that Sheikh Hasina had at the time this election was being questioned in several quarters. The election result eventually led to Sheikh Hasina's ouster as well, because there was a fair bit of anger around the election itself because it was boycotted by the opposition party. How do we go from here diplomatically as we wade through these uncertain diplomatic waters from here
on? Can you hear me?
I can hear you, sir. Yes, loud and clear, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. You are right that as diplomatically, it's a very sensitive issue. India has to do some tightrope walking because let's face the fact that relationship between India and Bangladesh during Sheikh Hasina's time were, I think, very harmonious and very favorable to India. In fact, she was seen as someone who is pro-India, and that was not being liked because on the ground, India doesn't have a very favorable, kind of image or sentiments as far as Bangladesh general public is concerned. Now, there are two issues. One is that what we achieved over the last 10, 12 years is going to be nullified. Secondly, how we are going to build a new relationship with the new dispensation which comes in. For next couple of months, it's the army which will be running the interim government. And fortunately, between Indian army and the army of Bangladesh, there's a good harmonious relationship.
I want to address some breaking news coming in on the broadcast. Sheikh Hasina has landed. Let's get that. Okay, Sheikh Hasina has landed at the Hindon airport. She's former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, who's landed at the Hindon airport. She also has her sister, Sheikh Rahana, with her. And they will be here for a short period of time and then are likely to move ahead to their final destination, which is expected to be the UK. Now, how long will she be here? What is the kind of diplomatic protocol that will be extended to her? Will she reach out to anybody in the security establishment in New Delhi? Are all questions. Let's change that. She's former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, who's landed in Delhi right now at the Hindon airport. Let's get in Mohammad Ghazali to give us the very latest on this. Ghazali, as we've been talking, Sheikh Hasina has landed at the Hindon airport. Tell us what could be the next few steps for as long as she is on Indian soil.
This is particularly done, Gauri, to ensure that she was not landing there at the IGI airport, or the Palam airport, or any such airstrip, and at the Hindon Air Base. So Air Force officials will be receiving her there, and it was also to ensure her safety and privacy. Right now, we are not in the know of the things that how she will proceed from there or where she will be proceeding from there. But we know that her stay is going to be of a very brief duration, after which she will be moving to London. Now, whether Indian government has sent out some message to her or not, with the involvement of Indian Air Force officials being there, certainly Indian government is involved there. As of now, we just know that she has landed there at the Hindon Air Base, and after which she will be flying out to London. But the duration of after how long she'll be flying to London is not known yet, but we only know that with her sister, she has finally landed here at Hindon Air Base. So all these reports that she was going to some other country has been proven wrong. She has rightly come to her neighborhood in India, and certainly Indian government has been coordinating when it comes to her departure, arrest, or say escape from Bangladesh at a time when people are on the ground there.
Okay, so Sheikh Hasina has landed at the Hindon Air Base. Remember, that's not a civilian air base. It's a military air base. She was in a military jet because Sheikh Hasina had cut some sort of a deal with the army, which is why she got the exit that she did, even though there were 4 lakh protesters on the streets of Dhaka today, and she did manage to leave Bangladesh safely. She's landed here. In the next couple of minutes, we'll have an idea as to how long she will be here, whether or not there'll be any communication with anybody from the Indian security establishment? Could it be just a refueling break? Remember, it's a long flight from here on to UK. I want to tell our viewers that Sheikh Hasina's father, Mujibur Rahman, had also come to India during former Prime Minister Indira Gandhi's tenure. That time he had sought refuge, and India was at the forefront of helping Bangladesh get freedom. So it's 50 years later, it's Sheikh Hasina who's here. Circumstances are different. Her stay would also be different. But this is important to tell our viewers tuning in right now that Sheikh Hasina is in India. She's in Delhi, just like her father was before 1971, along with the entire family. I believe, my memory serves me right, 5 sons as well. But the big story, Sheikh Hasina, former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, has landed at the Indian Hindon Air Base. She was traveling in a military jet. She'd cut a deal with the Bangladesh army, and which is why she got an exit. Whether it was honorable, whether it was dishonorable is the big question that we'll come back and talk more on. But the in Bangladesh continues, even as the diplomatic huddle that is likely to follow for India is also expected to continue next couple of hours. How India will approach Bangladesh, how India will approach Sheikh Hasina's departure, and how India will approach the security implications of this is all that I'm going to come back and talk more on. But on that note, we slip into a very, very short break. We come back with lots more.
Hello, Moto.
Motorola Razr 50 Ultra comes with Google Gemini.
Get the magic of the best working for you now.
Link your payment cards once, collect rewards forever.
International Airport, where we're showing these visuals. Arshdeep हमारे साथ हैं.
बहुत ही performance आई सारे दी थे बढ़िया results मिले.
We are in the city of Kanpur today because they have their champion back home, Kuldeep Yadav.
Desperation for each and everyone to go there and win the World Cup, and we did it.
Hello and welcome to
number. If you want to be a national party, is that you sort of accept the way the world is rather than want to endlessly hark back to how it was.
Modi is promoting the digitization of the economy, which is accelerating growth in the country.
After a great victory by Indian team, and today we are reporting from International Airport, where we're showing these visuals. Arshdeep हमारे साथ हैं.
बहुत ही performance आई सारे दी थे बढ़िया results मिले.
We are in the city of Kanpur today because they have their champion back home, Kuldeep Yadav.
Desperation for each and everyone to go there and win the World Cup, and we did it.
Stay informed and entertained with the new and updated NDTV News app. You can watch all our channels live, listen to podcasts, read breaking and exclusive news from around the world and more. Download the NDTV app today and get access to the best journalism and storytelling on your smartphone or tablet. The NDTV app. News that matters to you.
Some people say the metaverse will only be virtual. One day this lecture hall will be made of code, and driverless cars would be trapped in intersections. But even in this maze of the future, you can't wish away health. It's time to become more.
Hello and welcome to NDTV's rolling coverage of the turmoil in Bangladesh. On your screens are the latest updates coming in. Breaking news. Former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, has landed at the Indian Air Force Air Base at Hindon. She was travelling in a military jet along with her sister, Sheikh Rahana. Both of them have landed at the Hindon Air Base in Delhi, near Delhi, and are en route, likely to be en route to London from here on. How long will they stay? The diplomatic protocol that will be extended to her. Who are the likely people, if at all, somebody will meet her? Are the questions that we will ask. But first up, the headlines coming in this evening at 6 p.m. Bangladesh army takes over. Sheikh Hasina has landed in India. Former Prime Minister has been ousted and fled the nation amidst unprecedented protests. Army announces that an interim government will be formed, even as army chief appealed for peace and asked protesters to stop the vandalism. An angry mob stormed into Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's residence. Protesters vandalized Mujibur Rahman's statue. Dhaka Palace was also ransacked by angry protesters. Bangladeshi journalist joining us live on the broadcast to give us the very latest of the flux that's unfolding in the state. Tell us, sir, what's the... Masoom Khan joins us on the broadcast. Sir, can you hear me? Sir, my first question, tell us what's the latest that's happening on ground? What's the situation? Is there any possibility of a calm now coming in, given that the number one demand of protesters has been met? Sheikh Hasina has fled the country. Unmute yourself, sir. Mr. Khan, please unmute yourself.
Thank you so much, NDTV India. Bangladesh, this situation is very critical situation. Long week, the Bangladeshi student and Bangladeshi people, many demand our honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. But 2 days ago, student and people asked one demand: resign Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. This situation is a very dangerous situation. Our country, Bangladesh, this situation country leave Sheikh Hasina and Sheikh Hasina's sister Sheikh Rehana landing our friend country India. So at this time, our army chief and others Air Force chiefs, others law enforcement person meeting honorable President at Ganabhaban. This situation, so long time disaster.
I'll take
our country, yes. This situation is a very critical situation. Our Bangladesh decision destroyed Ganabhaban, destroyed our Parliament Bhavan, and so another Awami League party office. This situation has destroyed any Mahanagar, Jela, Awami League party office, and this time our army chief at press conference 4 p.m. at Bangladesh, he asks any situation under control, and he all others general this night meeting at President. And so this time, all our Bangladeshi people wish a peaceful meeting at our Army General.
This is what I want to ask you, sir, that if everybody wants peace, the Army Chief has said that there will not be any hostile action that will be taken against protesters. He's asked for calm. Sheikh Hasina has fled the country. So why is it that protesters are not ending their protests now? How long will this continue? And the scale at which the vandalism is happening is unprecedented.
Thank you. This situation, Army Chief's press conference, all are our TV and print and electronic media journalists, and where he says peaceful, all students, all people. This time, peace and peacefully, the systemic, this long time. We recognize at this time Bangladesh is very a dangerous situation run.
Okay, all right, Mr. Khan, thanks so much for joining us. Yes, it's a dangerous situation because of the scale of political uncertainty that's engulfed Bangladesh right now and the serious security challenges it's throwing up to the entire region. Thanks so much for giving us that update, and I'm going to get my colleagues to fill us in with the very latest. Vasudha Venugopal joins us live from Bangladesh High Commission. So does Saurabh, who's joining us from Kolkata to fill us in on the very latest that's happening in Bangladesh. Saurabh, to you first. You've been working the phones to get us the latest on what's happening on ground. Talk to us. How long will this political uncertainty continue? Who could be the interim Prime Minister? How soon could the elections take place? Is the army now keen to have a longish stay in terms of having a hold over the country right now? Tell us, what is it that you're picking up on any or all of this?
Well, you know, the first is that return to normalcy. That's still some time away, and I can tell you that because the Dhaka airport has been shut till 10:30 in the evening due to the unrest. An Indigo flight from Chennai, which was heading to Dhaka, is headed back to Kolkata to refuel and go back to Chennai. Meanwhile, the special Bangladesh Air Force aircraft that is presumed to have been carrying Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina is in India now. It has flown over Indian airspace for the last couple of hours or so, having taken off from Kurmitola and then flown in a direction towards Kolkata, and have then, of course, having flown onwards through Indian airspace. And we believe that it would have been in India now. And what we've been given to understand is Hindon Air Base is where that aircraft is. That's one thing that we've been given to understand from authorities, and also, several social media handles that have been tracking the progress of that Bangladesh Air Force flight, which also we had been tracking on NDTV right from the start. Now, apart from that, what next? Well, a semblance of normalcy will return, perhaps once an interim government is formed. Right now, the situation is fluid, it's volatile. We have pictures of people, barging into Ganabhaban, the official residence of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, till just about a few hours ago. And now you have absolutely random people, right in the bedroom, moving around the official residence, walking off with whatever they can. Some people, putting pictures on social media of enjoying a feast inside the Prime Minister's, residence. So these are pictures that are still emerging from Bangladesh and Dhaka, which means that law and order and peace is still far from returning, which means
how do we get
all
that
eyes
peace?
are
That's
now
the immediate focus. How do we get that peace, Saurabh? How do we ensure, or how will the army chief ensure that peace comes in? That's the first priority, isn't it? How do you ensure that calm prevails after what has been an unprecedented security situation?
Absolutely, and that's why it's so important to have that interim government in place, because then you can take decisions, then you can set things in order. But what has also happened is that, we were asking a question, reporters in Dhaka were asking a question about the interim government when the army chief said, look, the longer you are, the more questions you ask me, the more you delay me. Obviously hinting at forming that interim government. And that is something that we're still not clear about. Who forms this interim government? Because remember, the Awami League, which had been elected in an election that was held in Bangladesh in January this year, was not represented at that meeting before. Now, Sheikh Hasina, of course, we are being told, quit on an ultimatum from the army. But now, of course, the focus is on forming that interim government in Dhaka. And Dhaka right now is volatile. Dhaka is not peaceful. Dhaka has protesters around on the streets who are doing as they wish. We've seen pictures, mind-boggling pictures actually, to see a statue of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, who really is the founder, the founding father of the country, his statue being vandalized. So these are, absolutely mind-boggling visuals that we've seen over the day in the dramatic evacuation of Sheikh Hasina from the official residence, just perhaps, maybe not even an hour before it was stormed. And then, of course, that, that aircraft flying out of Kurmitala and heading to India. But obviously the focus is now on that interim government. There are meetings on, high-level meetings on in Dhaka. The army chief is expecting to put an interim government in place. Of course, the army is going to play a major role in all of this. But that interim government is something that's the need of the hour. Every minute without a government in Dhaka is actually prolonging the chaos that prevails on the streets of Dhaka and Bangladesh.
Absolutely, Saurabh. There is chaos and chaos everywhere. But this interim government, how soon it's formed, is really going to be the key focus area for India as well. Vasudha, let me bring you in on that. That's exactly what India would also be now keeping a very close watch on. Who will lead this interim government? How long will it stay? When will the elections happen in Bangladesh? This political uncertainty, how long will it go on, is going to be now India's top focus as well.
Absolutely, Gauri. And let me tell you, when I came to this Bangladesh High Commission just a few hours ago, I was talking to some staff members there, and all of them had these black badges of protest. And while most of them did not want to talk about it, at least one or two did say that their sympathies are with the student protesters. So clearly the protests that started on the 1st of July in Bangladesh, that have rocked the country to an extent that its Prime Minister, a Prime Minister who has been at the helm of this country since 2009, had to resign and flee from the country. So many of them are actually in support of that. That actually reflects the situation in the country, and it also shows that there could be far-reaching circumstances of what has happened in Bangladesh, not just in India but also in the entire neighborhood. What we hear now is that Sheikh Hasina has already landed in the Hindon air base, which is in Loni district of Ghaziabad, and this is also, I remember, one of those airstrips where a lot of people who were fleeing from Afghanistan used to sort of land in. I'm told that no diplomatic protocol was awarded to her because she no longer is the head of the state, or for that matter, so for instance, there are diplomatic protocols that the MEA sort of puts in place, and because she's not a head of a state, that she was not accorded one. But clearly there is a possibility that she could be recording a video statement. She could be releasing that soon. Local media has reported that, Bangladeshi local media has reported that she was not even allowed to record that media because people had barged into the Ganabhaban, which is the official residence of the Prime Minister, and she had to flee from there, from Dhaka, along with her sister. So clearly, this is a difficult time for Bangladesh. India is keeping a close watch on this.
Yes.
Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of the country, and Sheikh Hasina have been trusted allies, but Bangladesh is a pivotal country for India when it comes to checking the influence of China, and India is sure that it will put its own interest ahead of everything else. So that is why, when it comes to border issues, this is also the time that India will sort of, put in measures, proactive measures to ensure that India will not have to face the brunt of the tragedy that is unraveling in Bangladesh.
Stay with us, Vasudha. That's a very important update that you've given, that no diplomatic protocol was extended to Sheikh Hasina because she's no longer the Prime Minister of Bangladesh. Former Ambassador Basmati Mukherjee joins us on the broadcast, and along with Brahma Chilani, Strategic Affairs expert. Thanks much for speaking to me on this developing, unprecedented story that's unfolding in our neighborhood. Ma'am, to you first, Ambassador Mukherjee, the fact is that semblance of normalcy.
Well, first of all, I think the most important thing is to secure our citizens who are in Bangladesh, our High Commission, our diplomats, and also to think about the fate of the minorities in Bangladesh, the Hindus who are there, Bangladeshi citizens. I hope and pray that the mob will not turn on them. They were 26% when Bangladesh became independent. Today they are less than 5%. These are matters which would inflame public opinion in India. We would need to secure our borders to ensure that there is no refugee exodus in an uncontrolled manner. We would need to wait and watch and see what kind of interim government is being formed. What are the sympathies of that government? Whether the army is going to be actually forming a civilian government or is going to first take charge. But in my perspective, watching what you're showing on the screen and earlier on social media, it would appear to me that the first thing that the army needs to do in Bangladesh is to establish rule of law and to make the mob go back home. Unless that is done, Bangladesh is in turmoil and is unraveling. So the first need of the hour, which is an internal matter of Bangladesh, it's not for India to comment on it, is to establish rule of law and law and order in Bangladesh. Once that is done, as far as India is concerned, we are one of the closest neighbors. We have actually helped to liberate Bangladesh. Mujibur Rahman is the founding father of Bangladesh. Very painful to see his statue being desecrated. But this is foreign policy. Situations change in neighboring countries. We need to wait and watch and see what kind of government is formed, and that government should be formed as soon as possible so that law and order can be brought back. It seems to me to be very strange that so much of turmoil and chaos could happen within 24 hours, particularly because the Supreme Court of Bangladesh had already rolled back the original issue which had caused conflict, which was the reservation issue, which had been accepted by the government. And at that point of time, it had seemed as if the protests would die down. Therefore, it would appear to me that these protests actually are very political in nature, and we would need to see whether they would also take an anti-India direction.
Yes.
In that case, it would be of great concern to India. It would be of great concern for the safety of our citizens who are there, of the students who remain, and of course, of the minorities, the Bengali Hindus who had stayed back in Bangladesh when it became independent. I come, by the way, from Bangladesh myself, from Dhaka. My parents come from Dhaka, and the security of the Hindus holding Bangladeshi passports would be on our mind definitely as we watch the chaos unraveling on the streets of Dhaka.
Okay. Mr. Chilani, to you, I want to ask that, some of the questions and some of the very important aspects that Ambassador Mukherjee also raised, which is that how political are these protests in nature? Are they being instigated throughout this year? In fact, the whole of 2024, ever since elections results came out, Sheikh Hasina cried hoarse that there was foreign hand in instigating these protests, and also talking about the election results in a certain manner, colored the verdict that came in. How do you see these protests, and whether or not there's actually a foreign element in terms of instigating these protests and its India impact?
That's an important question. What we know is that the Biden administration began targeting Hasina's government last year in the run-up to the national elections in Bangladesh. And the Biden administration even threatened to impose sanctions on key officials of the Hasina government. And when Hasina went to Washington last year to attend World Bank meetings. Not a single official of the Biden administration met with her. And then more recently, we have seen signs of China being angered by Hasina's decision to award the multi-billion-dollar Teesta project to India. China had been ready to execute that project, but Prime Minister Modi persuaded Sheikh Hasina to award that project to India because that project is coming up near India's chicken neck, and India did not want the presence of Chinese technicians and other workers in that sensitive area. So we know that powerful external forces were aligned against Sheikh Hasina, that it would take just 48 hours for a government to fall and fall so dramatically, with the army chief, not Sheikh Hasina, making the announcement of a departure, is very striking. It has, shocked many people, including me, that her government would fall so suddenly, so abruptly. And yet, I think for India, the developments in Bangladesh are of direct concern because whatever happens in Bangladesh directly impinges on India. India surrounds Bangladesh on three sides, and on one side is the Bay of Bengal. Bangladesh has a very narrow corridor with Myanmar. So developments in Bangladesh do hold direct implications for India. And also, as Ambassador Mukherjee pointed out, that the forces that were behind these protests are not exactly forces that are friendly to India. These forces that were either spearheading the protests or backing the protests, these elements included the Jamaat Islami, the BNP, which traditionally have been very anti-India, and we do not know what kind of new government will take office in Dhaka, whether the Awami League will have any role to play in the new government, whether these anti-India elements will gain some sway in the new government. All this has a bearing on India's security.
Indeed, indeed. And let me get that to Ambassador Mukherjee before I slip into a break, ma'am, which is that forces that may be or are inimical to India could play a very important political role going forward in Bangladesh. What should be our priorities in securing our strategic calculus?
The first and most important thing as a large neighbor and as a Bengali, I can tell you, is there's one thing that is similar in both parts of Bengal, West Bengal and Bangladesh, which is that Bengalis are hypersensitive about what they perceive as interference in their internal affairs. So it would be wise and prudent to do what we are doing, which is maintaining a diplomatic silence and allowing events to run their course while we watch them with horror on your TV screen, on our TV screens. We would have to act, as I said, if they go actively after Hindus, if they try to start killing Indian citizens, if they try to kill our students, and worst of all, if they attack the Indian High Commission in Dhaka and our consulates spread out over Bangladesh, that would be of immediate concern, and we would have to deal with it as any large nation would need to deal with it. I don't have to discuss it on national television. The other issue, which is of immediate concern, is the securing of our large border with Bangladesh to ensure that forces inimical to India and inimical to our national interests don't force their way in through that long border. Therefore, I see on the screen that the BSF is on high alert. We may be moving in our army to secure the border further. Please don't forget also that this has huge implications on what we call the chicken's neck, on the northeast, on the security of the entire northeast, on the security of my home state, West Bengal, and moreover, the impact it must be having right now as we speak on public opinion all over India, but particularly in West Bengal, which is directly impacted, and where many are descendants like me of families who were originally for centuries settled in Dhaka, Bikrampur, in what we call East Bengal before partition. And they would be particularly sensitive to the fate of Bengali Hindus who opted to stay on in Bangladesh because they thought that that is the country of their identity and culture, etc. Moreover, it is very ironical that Bangladesh broke free from the yoke of Pakistan military rule because they said that language and culture is more important. Bengali language and culture is more important than religion. But today, it would appear to me that the situation is so volatile that it could turn in the opposite direction.
Yes.
They could try to argue that ultimately the religious identity is more important than the Bengali language culture. So then definitely it would take an anti-India, anti-Hindu turn, and then definitely we would have to, not on national television, but quietly sit and look at our strategic options.
Okay.
Because we cannot sit by and watch Hindus or Indians being killed on the streets of Bangladesh.
Right.
That is
Okay.
difficult.
So I'm going to slip into a very short break, but we come back with this and lots more on the very latest that's happening in Bangladesh and its many implications for India, from strategic to military to the humanitarian angle that it may unleash for us as well. But it's time for a quick break. Rolling coverage continues. Stay with us.
Hello, Moto.
Motorola Razr 50 Ultra comes with Google Gemini.
Army coup in Bangladesh. Hasina flies out of country. Sheikh Hasina ousted, flees nation amidst unprecedented protests. Angry mob storms into Bangladesh Prime Minister's residence. Protesters vandalize Mujibur Rahman's statue. Dhaka Palace ransacked. Where is Sheikh Hasina finally headed? Flight radar says that she was spotted over Kolkata. Aircraft carrying Sheikh Hasina entered Indian airspace, landed at the Hindon Air Base. But what's her final destination?
After great victory by Indian team, and today we are reporting from Mohali International Airport where we are showing these visuals. Arshdeep हमारे साथ हैं.
ਉਹਦੀ performance ਆਈ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦੀ ਤੇ ਵਧੀਆ ਰਿਜ਼ਲਟਸ ਮਿਲੇ.
We are in the city of Kanpur today because they have their champion back home, Kuldeep Yadav.
Desperation for each and everyone to go there and win the World Cup, and we did it.
Hello and welcome to India Sense, where I speak with global opinion makers.
The United States has made
to how it was.
Modi is promoting the digitization of the economy, which is accelerating growth in the country.
After great victory by Indian team, and today we are reporting from Mohali International Airport where we are showing these visuals. Arshdeep हमारे साथ हैं.
ਉਹਦੀ performance ਆਈ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦੀ ਤੇ ਵਧੀਆ ਰਿਜ਼ਲਟਸ ਮਿਲੇ.
We are in the city of Kanpur today because they have their champion back home, Kuldeep Yadav.
Desperation for each and everyone to go there and win the World Cup, and we did it.
Stay informed and entertained with the new and updated NDTV News app. You can watch all our channels live, listen to podcasts, read breaking and exclusive news from around the world and more. Download the NDTV app today and get access to the best journalism and storytelling on your smartphone or tablet. The NDTV app. News that matters.
Welcome back. You're watching our rolling coverage of the very latest that's happening in Bangladesh. It's in turmoil. There is political flux. There is uncertainty that is of unprecedented levels. So on your screen are some of those visuals of when the protesters took to streets, vandalized the most historic areas and places of Bangladesh. Mujibur Rahman's statue was vandalized. The father of Bangladesh, his statue was vandalized. The Ganabhaban, where Sheikh Hasina used to be, has been vandalized. Then the museum has been as well. Even as the army chief has called for calm, asked protesters to go back, their number one demand has been met. Sheikh Hasina, the former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, has fled the country. She didn't even have enough time to actually deliver a video message. It was done by the army chief when he told Bangladesh and the world that the Prime Minister has fled due to a serious security issue. 4 lakh protesters, according to some reports, were on the streets of Dhaka protesting against Sheikh Hasina. What happens next in Bangladesh? The security implications it has for India. The humanitarian aspect of this entire crisis. Could it lead to more Bangladeshis wanting to enter India? Those are questions that the Indian diplomatic, strategic and security establishment is now grappling with. But first up, let's listen in to what Mamata Banerjee had to say, Bengal Chief Minister, on what is happening in Bangladesh.
কেউ কোনো সাম্প্রদায়িকতার মূলক আচরণ করবেন না এবং আইন হাতে নেবেন না। যারা বিপদে পড়বে আমাদের ভাই বোনেরা, কারণ এখন অনেকে আছে, আমরা কি গভর্নমেন্ট অফ ইন্ডিয়া এবং গভর্নমেন্ট অফ বাংলাদেশকে দেখে রাখছি। গভর্নমেন্ট অফ ইন্ডিয়া যেভাবে বলবে আমরা সেভাবেই করব। আর আমি সমস্ত পলিটিক্যাল পার্টি লিডারদের অনুরোধ করছি এবং বিশেষ করে সমস্ত জগতের সবাইকে, দয়া করে এমন কিছু পোস্ট করবেন না যাতে কোনো সাম্প্রদায়িক সম্প্রীতি এখানে নষ্ট হয়।
Okay, that was Mamata Banerjee saying that Bengal, like India, is standing in Bangladesh's need of our my colleagues Saurabh Gupta and Mohammad Ghazali joining us on this broadcast. Saurabh, to you first, joining us live from Kolkata. Give us the very latest that's happening there. A very close vigil is what West Bengal is also now keeping on how things are unfolding in Bangladesh.
Well, let me tell you, the parliament in Bangladesh's Dhaka has been stormed. Protesters are occupying parliament. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's residence has been stormed. The gates have been breached. Protesters have enjoyed a meal, looted the residence, including saris, including utensils, including whatever they could lay their hands on. They've taken it and walked out. Chaos prevails on the streets of Dhaka. Television stations have been attacked. And of course, there is absolute chaos on the streets of Dhaka. The Dhaka airport has been shut till 10:30, given the prevailing situation on the streets of Dhaka. So obviously, absolute chaos and anarchy in Dhaka, which is the capital of Bangladesh. And this, of course, follows the resignation of Sheikh Hasina, who then, of course, had to evacuate from her residence just minutes before it was stormed. And she, of course, had to take a helicopter. And then, of course, she has been flown out of Bangladesh. We have been given to understand that a special Bangladesh Air Force plane has landed at the Hindon Air Base along with Sheikh Hasina. Now, perhaps the indications of Sheikh Hasina going to resign were there from yesterday. Yesterday onwards, the situation started getting bad. Yesterday, almost about, many were killed in the protests. But it was difficult to fathom that it would all happen so soon. But in the morning also, there were indications that perhaps Sheikh Hasina would step down, but not in this fashion that we've seen that has played out through the day, where she's had to flee, she's had to leave the country. Protesters have stormed Ganabhaban, the residence of the Prime Minister, stolen saris, stolen paintings, and basically anything that they could lay their hands on, they've walked off with. Also, they've, stormed parliament. They're sitting in parliament right now. And, you know, you can see protesters in the parliament in Bangladesh. It's called the Jatiyo Sangshad. So that is the situation that prevails. The Dhaka airport has been shut given the prevailing situation. An Indigo flight that was headed to Dhaka made a
From
U-turn,
Dhaka, from
diverted
Ground
to
Zero,
Kolkata,
Salman
has
Saeed
reached
joins us
Kolkata.
live on the broadcast. Salman, thanks much for speaking to NDTV. My first question to you, explain to us, talk to us, what is happening on ground right now? How is the situation anywhere close to being under control, or is it as bad as some of the visuals seem to indicate?
Currently, I'm right now standing in front of the Parliament building. It's just behind, few meters ahead. It's the intersection here. Thousands of people are in the streets celebrating the victory. Everyone is showing the peace signs. If you can see behind me, people are all waiting. They're very happy that the military has taken over. I've spoken to a lot of students who are happy now that a lot of people have expressed their concern that the military has taken over. That there's still some places that have violence have taken place. Right now. Some places have some violence have taken place, but that's very common. It'll take time to take the whole city under control. But you know, there are people who are very happy. Students have expressed their. Students have fought for last few weeks. A lot of students dead. People have died. I was just outside 24 hours back. I was. Okay, I'll just let some people talk and then.
No, Salman, I want you to ask a question to them. Ask a question. What is it that they want now?
Sure.
What do they want?
Okay.
Sheikh Hasina has already left the country. Why are they not going back to their houses?
So English. Okay. So what do you want now when Sheikh Hasina is gone? What do you want? Actually,
Yeah. It's a fully shameful.
Okay.
And we hope in next generation got the democracy.
Okay.
Actually,
Okay. Salman, I want to come back to you.
For the democracy.
Salman, I want to come back to you because
Thank you.
Because in a situation like this, first of all, I want you to be safe. Secondly, I want to ask you this because what is it that these students want? You tell me. Don't ask those questions. You tell me what is it that you feel that these students or these protesters actually want. Everybody wants them to go back.
The student wants, initially it was on their quota. All of their demands were they were there initially it was only the quota, but then they wanted the government down, and they wanted democracy and no more corruption in this country. I've spoken to hundreds of students. And they have expressed that they want a non-corruption country.
Okay, I see lots of people behind you. It just tells that everybody is still on the streets and nobody is going back despite appeals for calm, despite appeals for normalcy. Final question, Salman. Final question I want to ask you this is there a word that's coming in from the army after the army chief's message? What is happening on ground? Do you see enough police? Do you see enough security? Because this could spiral into a bigger crisis, a security crisis.
Exactly. What I've seen is there are militaries, but there's no police. There's been some violence across. So we will like to just move out. If the crowd is getting too heavier, so we will move away from here, right? Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, all right. All right, that was Salman Saeed. We are trying to reach out to him to get us a sense of how things are right now on ground. You heard and you saw how he was actually completely taken over with the number of people on the streets, giving you an indication how volatile things are on ground and how inadequate the present security infrastructure is, given that lakhs of people still on the streets. Mohammad Ghazali, let me bring you in now. As things on the screens right now are flashes coming in that the External Affairs Minister has met Prime Minister Modi to apprise him of the crisis that's taking place in Bangladesh. Tell us, what is it that's happening in this meeting, a crucial meeting where Prime Minister Modi is getting an update from the External Affairs Minister?
See, Gauri, Sheikh Hasina has landed in India and she has landed at the Hindan Air Base. So certainly, this was all done by the clearance from the government of India. The Indian Air Force, the Indian Defence Services were also involved in it. And perhaps Bangladesh Army Chief was in constant touch with his counterparts here in India. And that is what the latest development is, to which Mr. External Affairs Minister, Mr. Jaishankar, has gone to apprise the Prime Minister about. And we are also hearing the reports that perhaps Sheikh Hasina is also seeking asylum in UK, though her sister, who is with her, she is already a UK citizen. So to ensure that she leaves India or she gets an asylum in London, in UK, she'll have to leave India in some time. And to apprise the Prime Minister about all these latest developments or what kind of support India can provide in ensuring that they are not seen as pro Sheikh Hasina back there in Bangladesh when people are out on the street very jubilant that Sheikh Hasina has left the country. So India has to trade a very, you can say, India will have to be very cautious about the way it is perceived back in Bangladesh at a time when the country is not stable. People are out on the street. The borders of Bangladesh with the states in India is very porous, as we know about, and that is exactly, these are some of the developments which the External Affairs Minister is apprising the Prime Minister about, the details about Sheikh Hasina's arrival and her future plans from now onwards, that where she'll be heading. Also, what is the ongoing situation back in Bangladesh? Who will be in charge of the interim government? Because the army chief said that the interim government will be installed there, will be elected there. But what will be the procedure? Because you heard the Bangladeshi reporter there, the people want democracy or a government, but after solid consultation with all those who were protesting there. So all the protesters who were out there, they're also demanding that if the new government is elected, anybody who is given the charge for the interim government, it should be done after the consultation with the protesters or the student bodies, which led this entire movement for the last 2-3 months.
Shifting goalpost is what it's looking like. It started with the quota stir. Supreme Court brought it down from 30% to 5%. Now the protesters are still unhappy, and Saurabh, you saw, in fact, the visuals of how Salman Saeed was completely swamped with so many people around him, indicating that this is a security challenge that could quickly snowball into a major humanitarian crisis for India, especially in Bengal, where you are standing.
Absolutely, and this is a concern that, at the end of the day, we are just about, not even, I think, less than 500 kilometers from Dhaka. So that is, of course, the kind of geography this region has. But let me give you an understanding of what seems to have transpired. Now, when these protests started, they were anti-quota protests. And then, of course, there was a comment by Sheikh Hasina referring to Razakars. Who are the Razakars? The Razakars are perhaps the descendants of the Pakistani army's paramilitary that was deployed in East Pakistan to quell the freedom struggle of what was then known as East Pakistan, now Bangladesh. Who was the founder? Who led that freedom struggle? Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. Now, the Indian Army also played a huge role in that crisis, but Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's statue today has been vandalized, and that will give you an idea of the kind of shifting of goalposts, because remember, when it began, it was quota protests. We were talking about shifting of goalposts. Then it became Sheikh Hasina's resignation. Now Sheikh Hasina has resigned. So what do the protesters want? Why are they still out on the streets? That's a question that everyone is asking. Because remember, Sheikh Hasina is gone. She's left the country. So this is, of course, a crisis that is continuing. There's absolute chaos. Parliament has been stormed. Ganabhaban has been stormed. Ganabhaban was the official residence of Sheikh Hasina. People have walked off with saris, with utensils, with, even fish. And there were videos circulating online of people eating inside Ganabhaban. Parliament has been stormed. Parliament has been occupied by protesters. There is no government. Interim government has not yet been formed. The army has issued no firing orders. So it's an absolute free-for-all, anarchy, chaos on the streets of Dhaka. The Dhaka airport has been shut given the prevailing situation on the streets of Dhaka. And this is a crisis that has gone from bad to worse. Remember, it's not only about Sheikh Hasina, it's not only about clearly quotas, because that debate was settled, that answer was settled long time ago. The High Court's order was, in the, the higher appellate court brought it down. So this is clearly something which the Awami League, the ruling Awami League has described, or was the ruling rather, I should say, in the past tense now, has described that this was always an illegal attempt at a power grab, is what the Awami League said.
Right.
That, that the quota was just an excuse, the quota protests. But that, having said that, much water has flown under the bridge, and right now the situation remains chaotic. An interim government is what everyone is waiting for.
Yes.
Return to peace, calm is what everyone...
India in the last 10 years. India was the country, one of the few countries that stood rock solidly behind Sheikh Hasina when there were questions asked about her democratic credentials earlier in the year. In the last 10 years, she's had a very good rapport and bond with the Prime Minister Modi, and that has resulted in some very landmark key decisions being taken on both sides. Let's get in Disha Bagchi to tell us on what has Sheikh Hasina's tenure been like for India, what has been the India-Bangla relationship in the last 10 years between these two leaders.
So right, Gauri, in terms of the rapport between PM Modi and Sheikh Hasina and India and Bangladesh in general, as you mentioned, under former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, we've seen very excellent, very strong ties between India and Bangladesh, and most recently under Modi 3.0, in fact, Sheikh Hasina was the first foreign leader to visit India in this the government's new term. So, and even this visit was crucial for ties between India and Bangladesh, since both countries actually agreed to they had a discussion about the Teesta River Treaty, which has been an important issue between India and Bangladesh, and they agreed to send teams to assess the dam project, and Bangladesh and India had decided to work together to restore this dam project. Apart from that, India and Bangladesh have also worked very closely in anti-terrorism measures and to counter terrorism on the India-Bangladesh border. So in these issues, India and Bangladesh worked very closely together. And as you also mentioned, rightly so, that earlier in the year when Sheikh Hasina secured her fourth term in power in Bangladesh in the elections, there were many countries which criticized the elections, calling it unfair, calling it undemocratic, because the opposition parties did not participate in this election in Bangladesh. But India stood firmly and said that this is Bangladesh's domestic affairs, and that they stood by Bangladesh's elections, calling it fair. So, close ties between India and Bangladesh. So now it's going to be we have to wait and watch to see how ties between India and this new interim government in Bangladesh will look like, because as history has showed, this is not the first time there's been a military takeover or army takeover in Bangladesh. They have a history of army takeovers in their country. But when it comes to ties between India and these military governments, they've not necessarily always been good. But under former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, ties between India and Bangladesh were quite strong. And even recently, Sheikh Hasina visited China, and the visit actually ended abruptly and quite early, which indicated that, in a sense, ties between Bangladesh and China weren't necessarily doing so well, which also is, in a sense, highlighting that Bangladesh was shifting closer to India. And especially the fact that the two countries were willing to work together and discuss the Teesta Dam project and the Teesta Dam restoration. So all of these things were crucial in terms of the ties between India and Bangladesh. So now it's really time to wait and watch and see how the situation develops in Bangladesh. And as per resources and reports, Hasina is in Delhi, so it's wait and watch to see what happens next.
All right, we take a very, very short break. We come back with lots more. Rolling coverage of the turmoil in Bangladesh continues. Stay with us. We come back with a very short break.
And today we are reporting from Mohali International Airport where we're showing these visuals. Arshdeep हमारे साथ हैं.
बहुत ही परफॉर्मेंस आई साਰਿਆਂ ਦੀ ਤੇ ਵਧੀਆ ਰਿਜ਼ਲਟਸ ਮਿਲੇ.
We are in the city of Kanpur today because they have their champion back home, Kuldeep Yadav.
Desperation for each and everyone to go there and win the World Cup, and we did it.
Hello and welcome to India Sense, where I speak with global opinion makers.
The United States has made a
number. If you want to be a national party, is that you sort of accept the way the world is rather than want to endlessly hark back to how it was.
Modi is
It's an ugly end to Sheikh Hasina's 15-year rule. The former Prime Minister quits and leaves Bangladesh. Army takes over the country and plans an interim government. Government overthrown and chaos is there on the streets of Bangladesh. Protesters take over Sheikh Hasina's residence, parliament ransacked, Awami League offices set on fire. Protesters also vandalize Mujibur Rahman's statue. Army chief appeals for peace. Forces won't open fire, he says. National Security Advisor Ajit Doval meets Sheikh Hasina at Indian Air Force Air Base. As she arrives in Delhi, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar briefs Prime Minister Modi amidst Bangladesh crisis. Images that sum up the day. Bangladesh's former founder and father of the nation, Sheikh Mujib's statue being vandalized by protesters. It was a day of fast-paced and dramatic developments. Sheikh Hasina quit as Bangladesh's Prime Minister and army moved in to take control amidst violent protests demanding her ouster. Country's army chief, General Waqizur Rahman Zama, told the media that the army will form an interim government and appeal protesters to return to the path of peace. Sheikh Hasina, who started her 5th term earlier this year, left Dhaka in a military aircraft. The protests in Bangladesh, which began last month, swiftly escalated, and it started, remember, as an agitation against quota system over what was seen as a decision which was seen as undemocratic by the government. What the government has done was it had created a quota of 30% of government jobs which are reserved for family members of Mukti Juddhas, those who fought in Bangladesh's War of Independence in 1971. What is the situation on ground? We'll try and connect with our reporter as well. But first, let me bring in the guest. Lieutenant General Ata Hasnain is joining us. We have Nitin Pai, Director of the Takshila Institute, and Salim Samad, Senior Journalist. Nitin, I'm beginning with you. I was looking at the tweet which you have put out. Once a pro-democracy figure, a leader that the world saw a bulwark against Islamic extremism, presided over high economic rate, and then she turned into autocrat and authoritarian. Is that what will be the legacy of Sheikh Hasina? You have to unmute yourself, Nitin.
Yeah, it's difficult to keep me silent though. Anyway, so I think that's probably going to be the legacy unless there's another chapter in a political life. In some ways, it's quite disappointing because we grew up seeing Sheikh Hasina as the bulwark of democracy, fighting against military rule, bringing back democracy and secular democracy to Bangladesh, and doing quite well in both ensuring some kind of economic order and some kind of political stability in the last 15, 20 years. In that sense, she was the best choice for India. But power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I think over the past 10 years, it has been a steady decline in the way she handled the power that was entrusted to her. It could have been a very different story, but I guess we are not in a position to second guess what her thought processes were. But I think it was a terrible kind of an end to a great sort of career.
And Lieutenant General Atta Hasnain, the role of the army here becomes very, very important because everybody is watching out for every statement which is being made by the army chief. How is the situation different from what we have seen, say, in Pakistan?
Hey, Maria, thank you first of all for inviting me for your very important show. While I agree with my friend Nitin very much with what he says, but at the same time, if I may just add that for the last 10 years perhaps, Sheikh Hasina was battling against the odds. There was a huge backlash of radicalism, sponsored, if I may say, from across our other side of the borders, that's from Pakistan, and with attempts perhaps even from beyond to try and create some kind of, to extend the arc of radical Islam into Bangladesh. The portents of that were always there in Bangladesh. She was a bulwark against it. And in the last couple of years, she was resisting it even more. And one of the reasons why you look at her non-democratic credentials in this particular period in the last few years is primarily because she was the one who was actually battling the radicals all this while. I remind you of 2015 when the ISIS made serious attempts to get into Bangladesh at that time. If ISIS had succeeded in getting into Bangladesh, I can tell you the security situation for India in the northeast and on our borders with Bangladesh would have been something very different. Having said that, as far as the Bangladesh army is concerned, I think I know the army reasonably well. I have served with the Bangladesh army in the United Nations. And I can say that there is a clear-cut division within the army. There are pragmatic, secular people, right-thinking people there, but there is an element of radicalism also within the army. And therefore, at this moment, there will be all kinds of tugs and pulls in all different directions, which will go on. Very early to say which side will ultimately emerge the victor. But I, for one, would not have liked to be in the situation or position of the Bangladesh army chief at this time. It's a very, very challenging situation for him because having known the history of Bangladesh, radicals in the streets, radicals everywhere, this is going to be one testing time for them.
Salim,
Maria.
I'm coming to you now because, of course, this is a developing situation. We do not know what will happen in the next 24 to 48 hours because the army says that they would be forming the government. It will be an interim government. So are we looking at elections in perhaps immediate term, in a matter of few weeks? Would you suggest that?
Thank you very much. First of all, you have correctly said about the army is having a new interim government. Interim government, according to the Constitution of Bangladesh, will have an election in 90 days. So the interim government has no other mandate according to the Constitution. They cannot enact a new laws or they cannot rush away or amend the law. They only have to have the election free and fair and inclusive election in the 90 days. So once there is a 90 days, of course, there will be a lot of fear. And there will be the major three political parties will be the contestant because there is no fourth party. There is no fifth party. Of course, the Awami League, which has been routed out in this revolution. And the second is, of course, the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, which we talk about. And of course, the third is the loyal opposition in the parliament for the last 15 years, which is Jatiya Party. Unfortunately, the last two parties were created or formed or floated by the military generals. So obviously, you can understand
Okay.
There's only one party
Salim, if I may
which
ask
has,
you, since you're joining us from Dhaka, in terms of the situation on ground, essentials, how are they placed for the ordinary people who are not protesting? Because, of course, this is a student-led movement which has taken this shape. But what about ordinary citizens of the country?
you will be surprised if you look at it from the last 72 hours. You will find the common, the middle class, the working class, including the rickshaw puller, the vendors in the street. They all joined the protest. You may not believe me, but you can take the footage. You'll find the rickshaw pullers. They have carried bottles, water bottles, to serve to the protesters who are literally basking under the sun, this hot sun. So you can understand that so much of people have been there. You will find thousands of guardians of the students, of other students, and seniors. They have also joined the protest. The academicians, the cultural groups, the civil society, they were all in the streets of Dhaka for the last 72 hours. So it is of course a student protest, which has now today has turned into a victory celebration.
Okay, so it's a day of victory celebration which is playing out in Dhaka. But Nitin Pai, the protesters called themselves Long March to Dhaka. That was seen as a movement of defiance, but this movement of defiance has led to an exit of a government of 5 terms. I mean, she was in a 5th term, clearly.
Yes.
Yes, I will bring in Salman Saeed, but a word from you also, Nitin. Why did the Prime Minister not see this coming, in the sense that there were protests in the past as well, but at that time, these protesters did not have the support of the army? Do you think that made it worse, that there was an attempt to sabotage it from within?
Yeah, first of all, I think I would like to caution everyone to stop looking at things in black or white or good or bad. You know, who's the good guy? Who are the good guys here? Who are the bad guys here, right? Because these are actors playing for politics, trying to achieve political power, whether it's the students, the interim government, or the people in the armed forces, etc. So once we take that lens off and try and look at the situation objectively, I think we'll be able to make better sense from this. We won't get carried away with romantic notions of a great people's revolution leading to democracy and so on. We just don't know how this movie is going to end, right? Now, why didn't Sheikh Hasina see this? I think, see, first of all, it's not new. You know, this is not something we started in July. There's been a ferment of unrest, there's been ferment of protests, boycotts, etc., going on for the last year or so, precipitating in an election. But I think the Awami League had so much power that they stopped really looking at feedback. You tend to believe that you're powerful enough to cross any hurdle. And these protests will be like the protests which you just defeated 6 months ago. So, you tend to believe that you have more power and more hold on power than you really do, especially because people don't give you bad news. In a situation like where Sheikh Hasina was, I'm sure you couldn't go to her and say, ma'am, we have bad news, because the people bringing bad news would actually be sort of cancelled out, right? Pushed out of power. So it's like driving a car after you've broken your dashboard, your rearview mirrors, and your fuel gauge, and just pressing the accelerator. At some point, it's going to give. And I think that is the lesson which comes out of the current situation in Bangladesh.
Okay, let me bring in Salman Saeed, who's joining us from Dhaka. He is, in fact, 200 meters away from Ganabhaban, which was stormed and vandalized just some time back. Over to you, Salman. Speak to the protesters. What is the sense on the ground?
I'll just make a correction. I'm not exactly 200. It's few hundred meters away, very close to the Prime Minister's home. You can see the people standing behind me. They were telling me we went inside for the first time in our life. And I'll just connect with one guy. আমাকে একটু বলবেন আপনারা ইয়াতে প্রধানমন্ত্রী বাসায় গিয়ে কি দেখেছিলেন? আমরা সেখানে দেখছি উল্লাসিত জনতার ঢল। আমরা এমন একটা অবস্থায় এই পর্যন্ত জীবনযাপন করেছি, সেটা হচ্ছে আমরা কখনো ফেসবুকে একটা ভিডিও দেখলে বা একটা পিকচার দেখলে লাইক দেওয়ার মতো সাহস আমাদের ছিল না। এতটা আতঙ্কের ভিতরে বীর বাঙালি জীবনযাপন করতে হয়েছে। এবং কি বাবা মায়ের সাথে একটা সন্তান তার স্বাধীন সম্পর্কে, তার ব্যক্তি সম্পর্কে, বাংলাদেশ সম্পর্কে কথা বলতে পারতো না, এখন হয় আতঙ্কে। এখন মনে হয় এই বাঙালি এত বিজয় লাভ করতে পারে, এত উল্লাসিত, যেটা মনে হয় না স্বাভাবিক ভাষায় কাউকে বোঝানো যাবে। আমরা very happy, very happy, very happy. So basically he said he has, after so long, he's seen people celebrating inside the home. There has been a freedom of speech. All these years, they couldn't even talk to their parents or put like any on Facebook, on anything against the government. But now they're very happy that democracy will come back and they have the freedom of speech. They are trying to talk freely, in open, in public, which was never possible in last decade or two, I would say.
Salman, if you can hear me, Salman, if you can hear me,
yes, I can.
You know, the sense certainly right now is a sense of jubilation. Here is the Prime Minister who has left the country. Is there also some sense among some section of people that she should have faced the law, she should have been around them, you know, even if it was about ouster of the Prime Minister, it should not have meant, you know, it should not have been about her exit rather than she facing the law?
Basically, it's too early to say find those kind of people. As I was on the streets of Dhaka, I went to the Shahbag and I moved from Shahbag, where actually the students' protest started, and then I moved to the Prime Minister's house. All the places I've seen, people are really angry, and they're happy that she left. And if they would have got her, then maybe there would have been a different kind of vandalization, or she would have been like, you know, there would be a massacre. But thank God it has, she can't have escaped, she escaped alive. But people want to bring them to justice who are still there. There is no police on the street. There are still police stations that have been being burned down and looted. It's not safe at the moment in the streets of Dhaka because of law and order is currently not in place. But I'm sure I've seen the common people exchanging flowers and greetings to the military. Yeah, I've seen students and then political party people in the streets celebrating and saying, you know, we will just now have to wait for the democracy to return and the country to run in proper law and order. Freedom of speech has come back, and they will hope that country will log. And the students, you know, who were unarmed, who died in this protest, were really, you know, happy that now they will have democracy. Now they see a bright future. They want no more corruption in this country. They want a corruption-free Bangladesh. That's what they have told me.
All right, thank you so much for joining us. Salman Saeed there reporting for NDTV from Dhaka. Joining us now is Aisha Siddiqa, renowned author and Pakistani political scientist. Aisha, thank you so much. How are you viewing the developments in the neighborhood in Bangladesh, given that Sheikh Hasina has fled the country and now that there is an interim government? What kind of impact will it have on all the countries, be it India or Pakistan?
See, firstly, I think we were kind of expecting this thing to happen. Reason being that Sheikh Hasina, I mean, just imagine 3 rigged elections, control of, politics, control of opposition parties, and then after COVID, not managing to, kind of build up the economy or sustain the economy or economic growth patterns that were there. People were unhappy. And the other thing is that because of her very peculiar politics, which is, very partisan politics, she wasn't including other people, the support Awami League into the political conversation. So very one-sided linear politics. So this was expected that this is going to happen. And the kind of, it was an authoritarian government. So it had to go, people were fed up, people were unhappy. So that's one. Now, the impact it will have on the region, of course, it will affect relations with India. Not that they're going to be sour, but Sheikh Hasina was entirely dependent on India. And somehow the Indian government in Delhi wasn't making an effort to also reach out and connect with the BNP, Bangladesh National Party, and with Khalida, Begum Khalida Zia, and other stakeholders. So that would be a disadvantage for India. As far as Pakistan is concerned, of course, there would be, there'll be a sigh of relief because Awami League and Sheikh Hasina was seen as very anti-Pakistan. They were trying, Islamabad had been trying hard to make an effort to kind of reconnect, but that wasn't successful. So I'm sure that they are going to be watched carefully who is going to be the next one in. It's important to watch the interim government because even if Begum Khalda Zia comes in, if there are next elections, let's see what's there in store for Bangladesh politics. But definitely the students, the new political class, the younger generation will have an impact. They will be also on the negotiating table. So let's see where it goes.
And Aisha, in terms of how events have panned out, here is a Prime Minister who earlier this year was sworn in for a 5th term, and then things start going south completely and she had to leave the country. Do you think that she did not see this coming? And just look at the sheer dramatic nature of these developments. Her father's statue was smashed. Do you think Sheikh Hasina has ruined the legacy of her father?
Of course. Let's be very fair and honest. I mean, Sheikh Mujib himself was, fairly authoritarian in his attitude, but, perhaps he didn't know any better. And when you are a founding father and when you're trying to create a new nation, you perhaps are tempted to become more authoritarian, depending on, especially if you don't have a team of people around you. But what Sheikh Hasina has done in the name of getting her party back, her influence back, she was totally dependent on the police force, police and intelligence, and she had even rubbed the army the wrong way, the Bangladesh military. So she didn't have too many friends over there. Then amongst the people, I mean, look, I am based in the UK at the moment, and every second Bangladeshi that I come across was anti-Awami League. So one was wondering, when she was in government, one used to wonder, I mean, that, talking to the Bangladeshis there in the UK, that what kind of politics do they have? Do they not understand reality of their own country? But it seems that their own prime minister didn't understand the reality of their own country, that, you can't push linear politics, entirely and all the time. Especially the last nail in the coffin was giving all those facilities to war veterans, to Mukti Bahani war veterans. When there is a country where you have where there are jobless youth, and when there's a lack of and a need for economic growth. So her policies were too one-sided, and of course, last but not the least, instead of looking internally at balancing her politics and negotiating with her opposition, she was constantly looking towards New Delhi and getting a support from there. And I think what has also changed is that with 2024 elections in Delhi, which is completely distracted, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his BJP, and they perhaps can't help her the way they've done in the past.
Even as we speak, former Prime Minister Hasina is in New Delhi, and she's likely to fly out to London. Just look at her legacy in terms of what she was. She was she was Bangladesh's first female prime minister, and she brought about economic reforms and liberalization. Which year do you think things started going wrong with her and her decisions?
When she kind of started manipulating the first elections. I mean, it's a process. The simple answer is that if you represented the legacy of a party which had built Bangladesh, then you would have to understand that Bangladesh has evolved over years. There are other stakeholders as well. There is the BNP. There are more conservative parties as well. I mean, she was doing a very one-sided kind of a politics, and I don't think at this stage India is in a position to save her. At best, they can save her life and not kind of throw her out of Delhi and not send her back to Bangladesh, where she probably gets arrested. But I don't think many people can help her. That is, what has happened is that post Second World War, politics in all these countries around the world, especially in the developing countries, has changed. The expectations have changed. There is a younger generation. There is technology. There is social media. And you can't run a country's politics as you would maybe 20 years ago. And this is where she completely misread.
Aisha, my last question to you, because we are witnessing a great degree of turmoil around the world. Multiple countries are at war. Ukraine, Russia, there is Israel, Iran tension ongoing as well. But when we look at Asia, there only recently there was that entire coup that played out in Sri Lanka. If we focus on Bangladesh today, what do you think will be the likely fallout of this in the entire Asian countries?
Well, this is too wide a question. I mean, China itself is a subcontinent, and its politics authoritarian, different. China and Bangladesh have basically they have financial ties, they have economic ties. China invests in Bangladesh, and so does United States. Bangladesh's ties with both the West and China and India. I think all these relations will remain the same. Nothing is going to shift majorly. But the interim government will be more focused on balancing domestic politics.
All right, Aisha, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your thoughts on NDTV. Let me go back to the guests. Sultan Muhammad Zakaria, co-founder of Bangladeshi Diaspora for Justice and Accountability, is also joining us now. I've been following all your tweets very, very closely because you have been, tracking the developments very, very, again, as it has been unfolding. It's a historic moment, as you say, as people of Bangladesh now reclaim the place from where illegal orders were made to murder them. But you also say, Sultan, that Sheikh Hasina should be tried in International Criminal Court.
Yes, she should be.
Is that likely to happen now, given the developments that she has already fled the country?
Well, that's the effort that we have to make, because she has a lot of blood in her hands. Just if you can imagine, in the span of 48 hours, the number of young people she killed, her forces and her student wings killed on the behest of her. It's unprecedented, not only in Bangladesh's history. I think in contemporary, you can't show me in anywhere in the world that in 48 hours, a ruler of a country killed 300 people of their own. Young people, students, men and women. Most of them are teenagers. And then in the span of these 2 weeks, the official figure is almost like 450 plus, and unofficial figure, because the Sheikh Hasina's regime, she sent the DGFI and the intelligence agencies to take the death register from the hospitals. Hospitals of officials, both the private and public, were told not to disclose any information about the disease, any information about how many people are wounded, and etc. she had a carnage. She laid a carnage on her own people for the last 2 weeks, and that's just only one aspect of her crime. Um, in my lifetime, I have never seen police and security forces shooting at protesters indiscriminately like this.
Okay. Sultan,
I
continue to
spoke.
be with us because Nitin Pai will be, exiting the panel in just a bit. So, Nitin, a word from you. What is likely to happen in Bangladesh in the next 1 week? Okay, I think we have lost that connection with Nitin Pai. Lieutenant General, Nitin, if you heard me, what is likely to happen in Bangladesh?
Bangladesh is a very sophisticated polity. The people are politically mature, they're politically aware, and they're politically empowered. There are very strong political parties which represent various sections of society. So you're going to see a contestation, right? A lot depends on the army and the interim government it creates. If the interim government by the army, created by the army, goes ahead and restores democracy, elections, etc., we are going to see a good outcome. But as many people know, that armies and interim governments really don't go together. General Musharraf formed an interim government which lasted almost like 15 years in one way or the other, right? So we just hope that the army doesn't retain power in the way it does, because that's going to export a whole lot of different kinds of vectors of disorder to different parts of the world. So we should hope that the interim government conducts elections, and whichever party comes to power is a party which India will have to deal with. And the party in Dhaka will have to deal with India, whoever's in power. So I think the fact that who is on which side is a little overdone. We should just hope that stability returns, and it's a form of stability where there is some kind of a constitutional liberal democracy at play and not some whimsical military.
After a great victory by Indian team, and today we are reporting from Mohali International Airport where we are showing these visuals. Arshdeep हमारे साथ हैं.
बहुत performance आई सारे दी ते बढ़िया results मिले.
We are in the city of Kanpur today because they have their champion back home, Kuldeep Yadav.
Desperation for each and everyone to go there and win the World Cup, and we did it.
Stay informed and entertained with the new and updated NDTV News app. You can watch all our channels live, listen to podcasts, read breaking and exclusive news from around the world and more. Download the NDTV app today and get access to the best journalism and storytelling on your smartphone or tablet. The NDTV app. News that matters to you.
Great victory by Indian team, and today we are reporting from Mohali International Airport where we are showing these visuals. Arshdeep हमारे साथ हैं.
Good evening and welcome. The real political crisis in Bangladesh will, in this program over the next 1 hour, bring you the very latest. I'm Vishnu Shom. It started in the morning when Sheikh Hasina, the former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, fled her country. She is now in India after flying to the Hindon Air Force Base on the outskirts of Delhi. She's met the National Security Advisor. Is she going to be going to the United Kingdom after this? Will they grant her permission to stay in the United Kingdom? At this juncture, we just don't know. She's in India at the moment on a day in which there's been absolute anarchy on the streets of Dhaka. Lakhs of people out on the roads. They went into a house, they've pilfered things inside a house, they've taken away furniture, utensils. The Bangladesh army is now in charge. An interim government is in the process of being formed. But the mobs are still out on the streets of Dhaka, and there is a real worry that more damage and destruction can still take place. It is a free-for-all on the streets of the Bangladeshi capital. What are the ramifications of this, both from a law and order standpoint in Bangladesh, from a stability situation across South Asia, and of course the Sheikh Hasina story? What happens to her next? Will she be granted asylum in the United Kingdom? If not, where does she go, or does she stay in India? Remember, she's been a close friend of India's as well. When all of this took place, there are some reports which suggest that the army chief went up to her and said, this is the situation, there are lakhs of people out on the road, your position is untenable, and you have 45 odd minutes to resign. She did apparently resign. She was put onto a helicopter, flown to the Kurmitola Air Base, and from there she boarded a Hercules transport aircraft which flew all the way to Hindon Air Force Base. That's where she is now. As I mentioned, she's met the National Security Advisor. We do expect a statement from the External Affairs Ministry later on, and perhaps a statement in Parliament by the Foreign Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, tomorrow. But here's what the Bangladesh Army Chief had to say on trying to get the situation in control.
শান্ত হয়ে যায় তাহলে আর কারফিউর কোনো প্রয়োজন নাই, কোনো জরুরি অবস্থার প্রয়োজন নাই, কোনো কারফিউর প্রয়োজন নাই, কোনো গোলাগুলির প্রয়োজন নাই। আমি আদেশ দিয়ে দিয়েছি সেনাবাহিনী কোনো গোলাগুলি করবে না, পুলিশ কোনো গোলাগুলি করবে না।
Well, there's an important meeting which is now taking place with the Cabinet Committee on Security, which is looking very closely at the situation in Bangladesh. My colleague Vasudha joins us in just a few moments from now. We'll get more updates on that. But the government is well and truly looking out at the situation in Bangladesh, trying to get a proper understanding of what the situation on the ground is. I'm joined now by Sushant Sareen, the strategic affairs expert, and India's former High Commissioner in Bangladesh and the former diplomat Veena Sikri. Ambassador Sikri, did you expect the situation to unravel in Bangladesh quite as quickly as it did?
I must say very clearly that the situation began as a quota reform movement, but it has morphed into something totally different. I think that one must understand that the quota reform movement, those students who were uncoordinated leaders, they were just coordinators from different universities. There was no structured hierarchy among them. These quota reform leaders had been supported by Sheikh Hasina. In 2018, she actually abolished the quota. There was no quota for 6 years. And then when the High Court tried to restore the quota, she went to Supreme Court and got a decision. Now, right up to 21st July Supreme Court decision, the quota reform movement's demand had been met by that time. But in the meanwhile, with the firing, with the Awami League, Chhatra League, the Students' Wing of Awami League, the Shibir Students' Wing of Jamaat, and the BNP Students' Wing, with them entering the fray, the program became totally political, totally political. Even yesterday, the Daily Star in Bangladesh declared that 204 people had died. That was before the curfew and the additional deaths that have taken place yesterday and today. 204 people had died. Of them, 53 were students. That's all. The rest were, civil society people, the police, they were these political activists and so on. So the movement has morphed into something totally different. It has probably been taken over by the Jamaatis, because when you're showing these visuals of the protesters trying to vandalize a statue of Father of the Nation, Sheikh Mujib, this cannot be the students who will do it. The students are completely patriotic. Their movement was apolitical, and they had got the relief they wanted. But now the statue is being vandalized. The home of Sheikh Mujib, where he was assassinated, that has been burnt, and we have seen that even Hindu homes are being burnt. It is complete chaos. The army chief has presented an interim list. He is now, I understand, meeting the president and hopes to get approval of the interim list and announce that the interim government can start its activities. But in the meanwhile, the protesters have to agree to leave the streets and go back to their universities or their homes and,
All right, Ambassador
start
Sikri, just be with us for a moment. We've got some breaking news. The Cabinet Committee on Security meeting here in Delhi. Vasudha Venugopal joins us for more on this. Vasudha, what are you hearing? All right, apologies. We've lost that line. Sushant Sareen, let me come back to you. There has been no statement, Sushant, from the United Kingdom that they'll accept Sheikh Hasina and any appeal to stay on asylum bid in the United Kingdom. She's now here in India. Is there a strong possibility that she could be here for some time until she figures out where she wants to go? Or do you believe there is a real possibility that she will be granted asylum in India? She's been a close friend of this country.
Look, if she asks for asylum in India, I see no reason why India should not give it to her. India has not had a very stellar reputation of standing by her friends. Thankfully, this time, we've given her a safe passage. We've tried to do it earlier in Afghanistan as well with Dr. Najibullah. But I think it is important that while we continue to engage with whoever is in power in Bangladesh, we also give a very firm message that yes, anybody who's been a friend of India, if they want asylum in India, I don't see any reason why we cannot consider it. But it'll depend on Sheikh Hasina whether she would want asylum in India, because there would, of course, be certain limitations in India's case, simply because we border Bangladesh. If Sheikh Hasina wants to get active in politics again and starts doing her politics from here, then it could impact on our relations with whoever is in power in Bangladesh. There would be those considerations, certainly. But at least in the interim, I see no reason why we should not treat her as an honored guest, and convey this very firm message all across the world that we will stick with our friends and we will continue to do business with whoever is in power in their countries. And other countries do it,
Sure.
and I see no reason India should not do.
Ambassador Sikri, interesting. If this is the case, then it would be the second time when she's been granted asylum, right, in our country. It's 75 when Sheikh Mujib was assassinated, that she came to our country, spent several years. Her love for India, in a sense, would have really grown in the number of years that she spent earlier on. And I mean, how the clock comes full circle, the world comes full circle in a sense for her now, that she's back in our country in a very similar situation.
It is really tragic to see that it was her father's assassination who then led to her. She had been abroad. She and her sister Rehana, they were not in Dhaka at the time when the assassination took place on 15th August 1975. And otherwise, they would have been, with the entire family, her younger brother, newly married brother, the young child brother, Sheikh Russell, they were all cruelly assassinated. But then she was in Germany at the time because her husband was a scientist and he was doing some work there. And she was given asylum in India after that. She stayed here for several years and went back to Dhaka when then the Awami League elected her as the president of the Awami League, and she went back and started her activities there. Now, of course, it's tragic that at this very short notice, because the students' movement morphed into a political anti-Sheikh Hasina movement with the Jamaatis leading it, no doubt supported by Pakistan and China. I say China because I see that the way the former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina was treated in China in her recent visit there in the second week of July, it was very unusual for China to treat a guest whom they have invited in this manner.
Sure.
And I've been asking, I said all along, why did this happen? And now we know the reason why, because they had already thought that they didn't, they wouldn't support her anymore.
Okay, Ambassador Sikri, half a second. Let's just get a ground report right now. Salman Saeed, a reporter, with us at this stage. What is the situation, Salman, on the ground right now? What exactly are you seeing?
Hello, I can't hear you. Sorry.
Salman, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
What is the situation right now? Are the mobs still out on the streets of Dhaka?
I'm standing just a few hundred, like a kilometer from the parliament and the Prime Minister's home that was vandalized. This place called Mohammadpur area, but the police station just right next to my home. I don't want to name the station, but it's being literally set on fire. I can see smoke. People are vandalizing the cars and everything, looting. I've spoken to a couple of people. They were like taking out their printers, the arms and ammunitions from the police station, and they're just looting. And they're going over. I can still hear the sounds from here. Streets of Dhaka is really chaotic. When I just crossed the house of the parliament, Prime Minister home, just behind the parliament, there was a huge traffic there. People were trying to just get inside her home, trying to take away things. I met some of the people. I spoke to them. Some of them I met. One of the person who found Bangladesh national flag on this floor lying, and he brought it. He thought it should not be lying. It should be in a place where he can show respect. At this point, people are really
upset and scared a bit. Tensions are really high. We are hearing a lot of ruling party supporters, leaders, their houses are being set on fire, right? And people are really struggling to stay on the streets.
Right.
To
All right, just be
continue
with
their
us for a
celebration.
moment, Salman, and be careful where you're reporting from. Joined now by Professor Mohammad Yunus, the 2006 Nobel laureate and founder of Grameen Bank, one of the most well-known Bangladeshi citizens. Thank you, sir, very much for being with us.
Thank you.
I think the biggest worry now is law and order in Bangladesh. We'll talk about politics in a while, but it's law and order and who is in charge. What are your thoughts?
Well, of course, that's a very important issue, law and order. That's where it all began. They completely collapsed. And that's led to the demand for resignation of the government, resignation of the Prime Minister, and it has finally led to that resignation. Today, there's a celebration of the kind that we had on 16 December 1971, when we freed ourselves from Pakistanis. And now we got rid of a very totalitarian government. So there's a lot of celebration all over the country, not the Dhaka city. Millions of people out in the street enjoying their freedom, that finally we get free from all those difficulties that we have got through. So that's we're enjoying it, and we see that a new era is beginning in Bangladesh. Finally got rid of the people who have been torturing them, creating problems for them, and corruptions and everything all over the country. So now,
Yunus, is it not your worry, sir? Is it not your worry that there would be more instability going forward? One of the points mentioned.
Hopefully, the instability can be packed into a box and keep it there. That's what Hasina was trying to do. Or instability to come out to create a stability, because ultimate goal, ultimate cure, ultimate medicine of stability is to bring democracy that was completely denied in Bangladesh. So for the first time, we'll get a chance to have a real election. That's what the whole idea of having this revolution.
No, but Professor Yunus, the worry also, sir.
A transparent election,
right?
Not
by all means, absolutely. Democracy must thrive in Bangladesh. No two ways about that. But in the interim period, isn't there a real worry that there are Islamist elements and extremist elements in Bangladesh?
All kinds of elements. Of course, any nation.
And so that's the problem, sir. Because why would students go and destroy a statue of the father of Bangabandhu, of Sheikh Mujib, which we have on our screen? Are they not being instigated? This was anger against the Prime Minister.
Blame Hasina for that, leading the nation to destroy her father's image, because she has made so bitter thing for the whole country. They don't mind what they are doing that. It's the responsibility lies squarely on the Prime Minister who did that, made the whole country in that situation.
And do you believe that this interim government, which is now going to be formed, has it in it to actually bring law and order? Because even now, we had a correspondent up just about 3 minutes back, people are looting police stations and making off with weapons.
Yeah, so that's the number one priority, to bring law and order, which Hasina couldn't do. That's why it brought to the point of collapsing of the government. If she could bring law and order, this thing would not happen. So this is the continuation of Hasina regime, that now we have to make sure that the people celebrate and go back and get back to business, get to work, and work in a different way, in a freer way than they have ever done.
What about Hasina herself, sir? She's in India presently. We don't know if she's applied for asylum over here. There were some reports that she might be going off to the United Kingdom. Again, we don't know if the UK has accepted that. What are your thoughts on that? Who might accept her?
I have no idea. You're just talking about having her in India. I don't know whether that would be a good idea, because...
No, I don't know if she's going to... She's in India now. I don't know if she's going to necessarily be in India indefinitely. And I ask that because there has been no word from the British government as yet, assuming that that's where she was headed.
I have no idea. I'm not in the government. I'm not in the contact with anybody. So I have no idea.
What about the rest of her government? I believe the Home Minister's house in Dhanmondi and Dhaka has been destroyed, burnt. There are other members of her government who would potentially be targeted as well. Is that not a matter of huge concern?
Very much concern. So law and order has to be restored. This is the anger, which accumulated anger that led to it, but it's to restrain, make sure we go back to the normalcy as soon as possible.
But Professor Yunus, the one worry that that so many of us who observe Bangladesh closely is that the interim might be much more dangerous, must be much more dangerous for Bangladesh. Who is controlling these protesters? Is there an element of terrorists who are involved? Are there other groups looking to create instability in your country? And consequently, from an Indian standpoint, since I'm here in New Delhi, could it not have a regional spillover?
Very much. That's what I've been talking to every single interview that I gave. If you destabilize Bangladesh, it will spill over all around Bangladesh, including Myanmar and Seven Sisters and West Bengal, everywhere. That's why I was very happy that Mamata Banerjee came out with the statement that will open door, because he has to accept those people who are coming out of Bangladesh. Because if it continued months and months, this is what exactly happened. Not only they will spill over, they will bring their anger to all these places where they go, and they will make those their places to attack Bangladesh. So that will not be a very happy situation. And if there's a disgruntled people in those areas, they will mix up with them. It will be a volcanic eruption everywhere around us. And Myanmar shells is coming to Bangladesh very frequently now. So the Myanmar and Bangladesh problem again become bigger problem, because million Rohingyas are in here. They will like to go back to the country. Unless Bangladesh is a democratically run country, peaceful country, nobody will be in peace. If Bangladesh is in trouble, everybody will be in trouble. There's 170 million people. 2/3 of the population are young people. So you have to make sure that they are happy and they law-abiding citizens, and they know there's a democracy. Their democracy has to be practiced. These young people never voted in their life. All these elections, meaningless for them. They never went to the polling booth because those elections never held. So this is the situation that we are our starting point is. So we have to talk to the young people. Look, it will be in order. Democracy will be practiced, and you will be the part of the democracy that you will lead to.
Is there a worry that minorities in Bangladesh, again in this interim period of chaos, might be targeted systematically?
In interim period, I don't know. But if it is a democratic country, then they have a voice, because their voice will count. Like in India, there's a democracy. The minority can go and vote, elect their own representatives.
Yeah. Sir, it's always a pleasure speaking to you. I wish the circumstances had been different. Thank you so much, Mohammed Yunus, for speaking with us. Thank you so much indeed.
Okay.
I'm joined now by David Bergman, a British investigative journalist and a former editor of Netra News, the Bangladeshi news channel. Mr. Bergman, do we have any word from the United Kingdom on whether they would be willing to accept Sheikh Hasina?
There's been no word from the United Kingdom. Of course, Sheikh Hasina's niece, Tulip Siddiq, who is an MP, the Labour Party, in fact, is now a minister, is here in the UK. And in fact, Sheikh Hasina's sister, Rahana, Tulip's mother, is also in the UK. So you can see why this could be a natural place for her to try to come to. And no doubt Tulip, as a person of influence these days in the Labour government, may be able to swing it for her if that is what she wants. But I just want to come back to correct what I heard earlier from your female contributor, apologies, Ambassador, who I think has a very inaccurate misunderstanding of what is going on in Bangladesh, who said she thought that the protests were led by the Jamaat and instigated and supported by China. I mean, I cannot tell you how delusional that view is, as somebody who knows Bangladesh well. I mean, these protests came out of the fact that the law enforcement authorities killed at least 200,000 people. Had that not happened, then there would not have been an enormous amount of popular involvement in the protests. And you would not have been in a situation where if you went on the streets today, you would not find hardly a person who would not support the removal of Sheikh Hasina. She brought this situation completely on herself, and it is really a popular movement. There is no doubt all opposition groups are involved in some way, but that is not what this is about. This is about a popular sentiment throughout Bangladesh who had it with the Awami League and Sheikh Hasina, partly because they had been in power for 15 years and hadn't had any proper free and fair elections, partly because human rights violations were at a very, very poor level, And then because in the last 2 weeks, she's killed 200 citizens who are students, passers-by, including 30 children. That was a deep sear into the soul of Bangladesh.
All right,
And
Mr.
the
Bergman,
idea that-
half a second. Ambassador Sikri wants to reply. Go ahead, ma'am.
Yeah, well, I would like to say very clearly that I am not delusional. I was repeating what happened, that it began as a quota reform movement and it morphed into something quite different, very different, because we know the Daily Star published the figures yesterday that 204 people were died, not 200,000, as you said, but
I said 200,
and
I
out of
corrected
that,
myself.
53 were students. 53 were students, and the others were policemen and civilians and others who were also involved. They had given a detailed breakdown after examining bit by bit. It has been a quota reform movement and successfully led by the students. Sheikh Hasina had supported them in that right up till the Supreme Court verdict. But in the meanwhile, the clashes took place between all the political party youth wings, and this led to complete mayhem. And today, what is being shown in visuals about the attacks on Sheikh Mujib's statue, on his home in Dhanmandi, burning of Hindu homes. All this is not the case of students. I don't think there are any students on the streets anymore. I don't think, as Mohammed Yunus said, they're celebrating. Are they celebrating by burning homes, by putting things on fire, by looting homes? This is not a celebration. So I am saying that the need is for stability. That's what my point was mainly that the army chief would be focusing on bringing stability into the situation by presenting the interim government proposal to the president, and that the new interim government can start working. The first thing he said in his own press conference, the army chief, that he would like the protesters to go away from the streets. Nobody's calling them students anymore. They're protesters who are there from different political parties.
David, a quick response. This is no longer
Can
just
I
a
respond
student
to that?
protest.
First of all, the ambassador has got the chronology completely wrong. On the 16th of July, 6 people were killed. In subsequent days, the next 10 days, a total of 200 people were killed by law enforcement authorities. They were almost all shot. That is a reality, okay? Subsequently, yesterday, there were 100 people killed, and it was a result of clashes between both the protesters and the student wing of the Awami League. But why did the Awami League instruct the student wing to go out on the streets when there were huge protests of people calling for the removal of Sheikh Hasina? Clearly, that was a recipe for disaster. It was predictable, it was foreseeable. I said that the night before, this shouldn't happen, but in fact it happened. In terms of your other point, which is a very important point, I completely accept the issue of law and order and the issue of recriminations right now is crucial. And it is I'm really concerned about the fact that people are taking recriminatory measures against the Awami League. That is really problematic, and maybe even against minority communities, that is really problematic. And the army should have been much better prepared to deal with that.
And these are not students who are doing it. These are not students who are doing it.
Students. We are talking about the population of Bangladesh. We are talking about a movement which incorporates. I can tell you, my family is in Bangladesh right now. They're involved, and everybody's all their friends are involved.
All right, okay, both of you hold on for 1 sec. I want to go across to
Honorable Kamal Hussain very well. I know him very well.
One sec. Let's just. I want to move on to my other voices. Mohammed Al Masoom Khan, a senior journalist in Bangladesh and an associate with Millennium TV, joins us right now. The big question now, Mr. Khan, what's happening on the streets? We've had journalists report to us just a little while back that police stations were still being looted. Is that what you're hearing?
Thank you so much. This situation in Bangladesh is very critical and very difficult situation around our own country, Bangladesh. Because all our students and people, few days, few weeks, Bangladesh, very well, and all our world journalists, political person, prime minister, president, very know. This situation today, the Bangladesh Prime Minister and Bangladesh Prime Minister Sister Sheikh Rehana leave Bangladesh. But this time he leave India. So Bangladesh people ask, Bangladesh minority, Hindus, all are people this time say a peaceful Bangladesh. So what? This situation create this time, every people, every our Bangladeshi minority people say, don't any violence. This time, some people, some elegant people attack Aum League political
I just want to
leaders.
go back to,
House.
and let's try and get Salman Saeed back on if we can in just a few moments. We'll try and get him back. But for the benefit of our viewers, I just want to go through some of the images that we've been seeing, which really have defined today. And I think that's one of the images of people just, out of control, entering Sheikh Hasina's house, making off with her tree, with her furniture, with her utensils, etc., etc. Her father, the late Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the father of Bangladesh, his statue being defiled over there, any number of people crossing the gates, jumping over the gates and breaking open the gates later on of the official residence of Sheikh Hasina, who then had to bid a hasty retreat from that place, got onto a helicopter, went to the Kurmitola Air Base, got onto a Hercules transport, then flew to Delhi, to the Hindon Air Force Base. That's where she is now. Sorry, go ahead.
The decision created 6 months ago. Some people, some entire our humanity, the Bangladeshi, our current only government.
Right.
This decision is very difficult.
No, it is very difficult, and I just wanted to get a couple of more reactions on that.
China's and Pakistan intelligence ISS back the wall.
Okay, Mr. Khan, hold on. I just wanted to go back to Sushant, who's been waiting very patiently. The macro picture over here, from an India standpoint, what are some of the broader concerns, Sushant?
I think, Vishnu, one of the concerns is, of course, the kind of pogroms which we are seeing on the streets against the Hindus. I wonder, there is this mindless denial that all of this is students. It's all nice and happy. Even the professor earlier, the Nobel laureate, all kinds of people these days get Nobel Prizes. People are enjoying on the streets. Maybe they enjoy by burning Hindu homes. I don't know. But the kind of exodus of Hindus that has taken place from about 22-24% of the population, they're down to what, 8% or something. And everybody's in denial. So one is, of course, that this latest round of what is happening, will it lead to another exodus of the Hindu community? And then, if you have a refugee crisis, how are you going to handle it? Secondly, we don't know what kind of stability, if at all, is going to come to Bangladesh right now. Right now, things are in a flux. We are hearing of all kinds of violence on the streets. We don't know who is actually leading these mobs, whether these mobs can, the law and order can be restored.
Nobody is leading them, Sushant. That's the big worry.
That's what I'm saying. That's why I said I asked it in a rhetorical manner that who's leading these mobs. Yeah. And if nobody is leading, and because we are seeing violence across the country, right? It's not just in Dhaka, or not just this large mob which was making a beeline for Dhaka, which is carrying out this kind of, the rape and pillage which is taking place. It's happening across the country. So the question then is, how do they restore order? And then they formed an interim government. Will this interim government be acceptable to all sides, or will there be a big furor over this particular government? And will this government then be able to restore some kind of semblance of law and order and of running the government, which has been in a state of disarray for a fair bit of time? So I think there are going to be serious concerns. And then whatever replaces that government finally, will they follow the policy of the past 15 years back, where the Jamaat and the BNP were together in government, and they were sponsoring Islamist terrorists, they were sponsoring separatist groups in India, terrorism was coming into India from Bangladesh. Sheikh Hasina clamped down on that activity, which is what led to a lot of good developments between India and Bangladesh, because the Indian security concerns were taken care of. So these are very serious concerns. And then, of course, you already have a Myanmar on our borders, which is in a flux. You have a Bangladesh, which is God knows where it's going. So yeah, I think it's going to be a very serious crisis on our eastern
All
borders,
right.
which is what we will be looking at, which Vishnu really means that a kind of a third front is opening up for India. We have
No,
one
it's a
with the
nightmarish
Pakistan.
situation. And if things aren't controlled fast, I'm just going back to Salman Said, who joins us once again. Salman, has there been any attack, more than the one odd attack, which has been reported against minorities? Is there something larger and more systemic in your country, which is already starting?
So right now we are, there's been a lot of attacks in political party people's house, the ruling party people's house, and the police station. That is more worrying at the moment. You know, the police stations are really place where there are more arms and ammunitions. As I told you earlier, just the police station right inside my house, it's just a few hundred meters walking distance, right? I can still see the fires are burning. People are making sounds. They are taking out guns and firing in the skies. You know, I don't know what they're doing, but it's kind of dangerous. Also, you know, normal civilians having lethal weapons in hands. We don't know what they're going to do with this. Not everyone is celebrating. Some are taking advantage of this situation. I was going out to pick up my wife a few hours back from their celebration from the Parliament building site. There also, when I was crossing Prime Minister's home, I could see a huge traffic. They're trying to enter the Prime Minister's building residence and trying to loot everything. But till the celebration is fine. But now the law and order needs to come in some control. I think the military will or the police, they will restore at one point. Just we don't know how the security of the people, lives of people, and their belongings will be said. That is the problem. As I speak, I don't know if you can hear on my background, there are sounds of cars being broken, police cars basically. I don't know. I can try to show you if you can see the fire from my window. The road, and then you see the light. There are fires still burning.
Yes, we can see that. Go ahead, keep talking. Describe what you're seeing.
Yeah. So there, I can see like exactly there. I was there in front of that building. People were chanting slogans, and they were happy. And like everything was, they're saying, yeah, the ruling party Awami League has left. Now they will catch each of the Awami League. They were shouting slogans. Each of the Awami League people will be caught, and then they will kill them or something like that. So it's a lot of brutal anger, you know, of these decades of people suppressed. You know, they could not come out of their home. Other believer of other political parties, they could not talk. They were hiding. All of them have come out. And you know, when police, there's so much corruption in this country. I was talking to a couple of students when the celebration march was going around the city. I was walking through, and I was talking with the students who are the real heroes. You know, these students, these young kids were the real heroes of this protest and this freedom. Since myself, these students, we haven't seen the 71 war, but we have seen 2024's.
No, but Salman, let me ask you this question. Would you agree that this began as a student protest but ended up becoming something much larger? And that the protest that you're seeing now is not so much about the quota, right? But it is, it's about something much larger. It's being called freedom and democracy by some people, but it could be an opportunity for strange forces, dangerous forces in Bangladesh to take advantage of the situation, and the entire situation becomes even worse. Is that a worry?
I will. It is a worry, but I will also agree. It was a small protest started by the students of Dhaka University as a quota movement. But then, when the corrupt government officials were trying to mobilize them and motivate them to say what they wanted, these young kids were very smart. They called themselves Gen Z. They're the generation who fought for like, there was a traffic rules and regulations.
I just wanted to
back.
quickly go across to
Now,
Mohammad Ali Masoom Khan once again. Mr. Khan, who is in this interim government that is being formed? Do we have any names?
Okay. This time, our army chief and all our army high official person this night meeting our honorable president Shahabuddin. At this meeting attend all our Bangladesh political parties high official, but this meeting without Aumi League. This situation under this time our generation, our people, all our Hindus, minority people, this situation, all our people, all ask a peaceful democracy country running in Bangladesh. So Ganabhaban has destroyed all our student people get some rover. This honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina usual.
Sir, the line is coming and going. I'll come back to you in just a moment. David Bergman, what exactly is the way forward? And do you have confidence in the ability of the Bangladesh Army Chief and the Bangladesh Army to try and bring normalcy? Because he has made it absolutely clear that there will be no force per se. They will not open fire. But in a situation like this, when you've got crazy mobs out there, how do you actually control these mobs?
I was very surprised that the army had not planned the situation better so that they were out in the country and able to ensure that the scenes that we are seeing, which are concerning, undoubtedly, because didn't occur, because it was foreseeable that there's a huge amount of anger. I mean, I get the understanding from your speakers from India that they don't recognize this, but from a context of Bangladesh, there is huge amount of anger and resentment against the government, against Sheikh Hasina, which obviously focused in these huge protests that took over from the quota protests. And that has come out. And so it was very obvious that you would have a lot of emotions which are pent up and which are coming out in the kind of violence that we're seeing now. And I'm very concerned that the army hasn't been able to get this under control, and they absolutely must do, because clearly this cannot go on, and the whole idea of a positive future will not be quite so obvious to anyone if it doesn't happen. I think putting that to one side and assuming the army does able to manage that, then there's the question of how successful the interim government can be. They have a huge challenge ahead of them, because you have to recognize that the Awami League Party took control over all the major institutions of state. And so they are full of Awami League loyalists. And that was the way the Awami League was able to rule as effectively as they have. And so it's going to be difficult for an interim government that's going to try to govern in a different way. They're going to have to use the judiciary, the civil service, the law enforcement authorities to do much of their work. And if they remain partisan to the Awami League, that is going to prove to be very difficult. There's also another issue about accountability. There is a popular demand that those involved in these killings be brought to account. Now, can that be done fairly? Is the army the right entity to be involved in the investigations, which I believe is what they've said they are? I mean, that's of concern, because you don't want a situation where you return to the same old lack of due process as many people thought existed under the Awami League.
Right.
So there are tremendous amount of challenges ahead for the new government.
All right, I'd like to thank you all very much for joining us. An absolute crisis in Bangladesh at this stage. What happens tomorrow or going onwards? Will there be some sort of control on this crowd? A huge regional impact already, and no one really seems to know where this is all headed. We're going to take a short break at this stage. We're going to come back to the story. Just for the benefit of our viewers, a quick summary. Bangladesh was plunged into crisis far more than what we've seen over the last couple of weeks, with Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina having to flee the country. She's now in India. We don't know where she's headed next. She's in the national capital region. She's met the national security advisor. Protesters stormed into her house. Lakhs of people out on the streets of Dhaka. These are images from inside her house. They pilfered, they stole. The army came in a press conference, said that they were now in charge. An interim government was being formed, advising people to go back home, but promising that the army would not open fire. At the moment, nobody knows who's leading the protesters. The situation seems to be completely out of control. A major regional crisis, and one that could potentially continue to get out of control. We're going to take a short break. Coming up after that, the former Foreign Secretary Harshvardhan Shringla on this situation in Bangladesh.
Get the magic of the best working for you now.
Link your payment cards once, collect rewards forever.